How you doing, folks? I'm recording this on Wednesday the 20th of May. It's probably going to be nearly kick-off time in the Europa League final in Istanbul by the time I've actually posted this online. So I'll put this right at the beginning just in case you catch it before you're watching the game on TNT or wherever you're watching the Europa League final, Aston Villa against Freiburg. There was something, I just need you to know this before you go into this. There was somebody mentioned, definitely I was watching the second leg of the semi-final between Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa at Villa Park when Villa totally scalped them 4-0 to cruise into the final. Unai Emery taking his fourth club into the final of the Europa League, try to win it with the third club, try to win it for this would be the fifth time altogether he's won it. This is European history, a European history maker we are looking at here. But I was watching that and I'm sure somebody, somewhere along the line on TNT, I wish I'd jumped on it, I wish I'd actually nailed it down or recorded it or taken a note of exactly who it was that said what at what point, because it's nothing I love more than a chance to pretend I'm outraged, but what I'm actually trying to do is show off a bit of the European club football knowledge. But somebody said it was the first time since 1990 that three different clubs from the same country had been in the three different European finals. Because you've got, obviously, there was only two European finals for like 22 years between 1999 and, well, there's only two European finals from 1955 to 1960 inclusive. The Fairs Cup and the European Cup. And then they brought in the Cup Winners' Cup from 1960-61 season, and we reached the first final, right through to 1999. And I was at the last final, was played at Villa Park on 19th of May, 1999. I was there the week before I get married. So I've actually been to a European final at Villa Park, so you're not doing very well. The Super Cup doesn't count. The Super Cup isn't a European final. It's as much a major European final as the Intertoto Cup. So somebody said it's the first time since 1990, because we're now, since 2021, 2022, they brought in the Conference League, which is actually a tertiary tournament. UEFA have said outright it's a tertiary tournament. It's the third tournament. So you get the Champions League as the most important one, you've got the Europa League as the second most important one, and then they've said the third and you can tell by the teams that are in it and all that, the clubs that are in it. It's a shorter group stage as well. There's only 6 games opposed to the 8 that are in the other two competitions these days. That it's the least important, and they're all called leagues. Europa League, Champions League, Conference League, and it's 1, 2, 3. They've got different coloured bunting as well. The orange for the Europa League, the green for the Conference League. I find myself though, as a kid of the late 70s and the early 80s, when I really fell in love with European competition, European club competition. It was a lot more mysterious because you saw a lot less of it on the television. But I'm a bit like the folk, the adults that I encountered as a kid who were still struggling with decimalisation, which happened just a year or so after I was born, decimalisation. And they were, farthings and pfennigs and a guineas. And I could, threepenny bit. They try to explain it to me, and I'm like, what? There's 15 threepennies and a tanner. For years I would watch with Neil and I the brilliant scene in the Mother Black Cap, fuck are you talking about? Your uncle, the one with the house in the country. Oh, Monty, give us a tanner and I'll give him a belt. I thought he said give us a tenner and I'll give him a belt. And I knew Withnail was a guy who's, obviously, he's grubbing, he's vino, he's trying to get as much as he can out of people. So it made sense in the kind of tone, the message of the film, that he was asking his mate for a tenner to make a phone call, and he would spend the change on but it's a tanner. The old money is a tanner, and it was a note as well. You get a tanner note. So I didn't really understand. There's how many is it one? Is a guinea like £1.5 or £1.20? I can never remember. It was like, why don't you just make it a pound? Because that would be a pound. There's 3 threepence halfpennies in a sovereign that's a punt in a Deutschmark and stuff. I just really didn't understand it. And these people also seemed to, the older people, they knew all that stuff. No bother. They could break it all down, how many such and such and a such and such farthings and a sovereign and a crown and all that kind of stuff. But they would struggle with decimalisation, which was, a pence, 10 pence is 10 pennies. It's not 50 pence is 50 pennies. A pound is 100 pennies. And they're like, I can't get my head around that at all. And I was like, how much more straightforward do you want it to be? I'm like that with the new straightforward UEFA. We've got Tournament A, the most important, Tournament B, the second most important, Tournament C. We'll give them different colours, and if you win Tournament C, you get promoted automatically into Tournament B. If you win Tournament B the following season, you'll play in Tournament A. It's straightforward, and I'm still struggling because when I grew up, the thing was the Cup Winners' Cup sometimes was the second most important, sometimes was the third most important, depending what kind of teams were in the competition, who would get to the final, where the final was played. You get the Anderlecht team in the 70s who reached 3 successive Cup Winners' Cup finals. Of course, nobody ever retained the Cup Winners' Cup, so they lost the middle one to Hamburg. But Anderlecht from Brussels in the first of the 3 in a row. They also lost as we're going to mention, when they lost the final in 1990. But they reached the Cup Winners' Cup final 3 seasons of trot in the 70s. It was 76. I played West Ham in Brussels at the Heysel, so it's like 60,000. It's mobbed, and it's 4-2. They're a cracking team. They had Dutch World Cup players in them. The famous Dutch team of the 70s, and the Belgians are pretty useful as well. Really, really exciting team. Frankie van der Elst and that kind of stuff. And they had the second final, I think, was played in Amsterdam, and they played Hamburg, HSV in Hamburg. So that was absolutely mobbed as well. The old Olympic Stadium in Amsterdam, and that's so close to. That's just over the border for the Belgians. And the other one was in Paris, the Parc des Princes, PSG's home ground. The final in 78, they played Austria Vienna, another cracking side. Two kind of violet coloured kits, Adidas with 3 stripes, lovely, lovely stuff. Scalped them 4-0. PSG, but that's just over the border as well, over another border, Belgium into France. So there was like 50,000 at that one. Beautiful football, beautiful crowds, and that made it more important than the UEFA Cup at that point, which was also doing really well. But it was a 2-legged final. That was always a disadvantage for it. So I'm struggling, but now I'm trying. I've got it in my mind. What's the 3 tournament? The big point is that the lassie was saying on TNT, it's the first time, because Arsenal in the Champions League final against PSG, and you've got Villa in the Europa League final tonight against Freiburg of Germany, and you've got Crystal Palace are going to be in the Conference League final against Rayo Vallecano. So that's 3 English teams, and that's the first time since 1990. She said, what are you talking about? There's been a team from each country in 3 European finals. And I'm like, that's just nonsense. You know what I mean? 1990 is the only time that you had one country won all the competitions, won all the 3 European finals at a time when there was 3 European finals. It was Sampdoria, as I said, won the Cup Winners' Cup. They beat Anderlecht in the final in Gothenburg. It was Milan in the European Cup final, as was then, just before it became a few years before it became the Champions League. They beat Benfica in Vienna. Frank Rijkaard, the only goal of the game in the European Cup final. And 1990 UEFA Cup, it was Juventus against Fiorentina. Fiorentina played their home leg at Avellino. There had been crowd trouble, Casaraghi, not the Comunale, and Juventus must have played more home games at different stadiums than any other club in Europe. European finals. They actually moved to San Siro in 95 when they got to that UEFA. Alec, just 1 point at a time, mate. 1 point at a time. I get very excited when about European finals. But that was it. So they had 4 teams in the 3 European finals, but they won the 3 of them. I mean, you'll have to go back to 2019 when it was Unai Emery who was in charge of Arsenal when they got to the Baku. Remember, we were trying to get to Baku, the final in Azerbaijan, and they lost to Chelsea. And in the Champions League final was Liverpool and Madrid in the Metropolitano, and Madrid beating Spurs. Arsenal and Spurs both in the European finals. And they won Spurs last season won the Europa League. Arsenal this season chance of winning the Champions League. Spurs might get relegated. Arsenal just become champions. It's amazing stuff between those two derby rivals. But that was 4 English teams when there was just 2 finals. There only was 2 finals. We didn't have the 3 finals, the 3 European finals again until 2021-2022 season when we reached the European final. So that was, we've already had 4, that equaled 1990 in terms of the number of, and it's happened a few times, you got 4, I think it happened a few times. I mean, for me, for example, since then, what was it, 1993, when we nearly got to the Champions League final, Marseille got there instead, they beat Milan in that final. The Cup Winners' Cup final that year in 93 was Parma beating Royal Antwerp at Wembley, and the UEFA Cup final in 93 was Juventus against Dortmund. So it was an Italian team in each of the 3 European finals then. I think it also happened in 94, Milan thrashing Barcelona, Pep Guardiola getting run over in the midfield there. Epic classic, still my favourite my favourite exhibition of a European, sorry, a Champions League final as it was then. That was in Athens. So Milan beat Barcelona, and the UEFA Cup final was Inter beating Casino Austria Salzburg. Now, technically, now they're Red Bull Salzburg in 2 legs in the final, and it was Parma losing the Cup Winners' Cup final to Arsenal. Arsenal European final. It's a big theme. And then in 2023, just like 3 seasons ago, you had Inter losing the Champions League final in Istanbul to Manchester City, Roma losing the Europa League final to Sevilla in Budapest, where the Champions League final is going to be this season in the Puskas Arena, and Fiorentina losing to West Ham in the old was it Eden in Prague. Bampot scumbag Slavia Prague's ground, but they lost to West Ham. David Moyes, West Ham, they lost that Conference League final to them. So that was 3 Italian, losing the final, but still 3 different finals. And as a team, the same country's got a team in all 3 of the European. So I don't know, just ignore that. I think it's much more interesting these days, like in 2022 when we got to the European final. It was us, of course. You'll not forget we lost to Eintracht Frankfurt. That's Germans against Scots. You had Roma beating Cyril Desser's Feyenoord in the Conference League final, the first ever Conference League final. That's Italians against the Dutch. And the 2022, it was the Spanish against the English in the Champions League final in the Stade de France, where Real Madrid beats Liverpool. So it was 6 different nations represented in the 3 European club finals. I found that more interesting. It's not that I don't want to talk about the season, but I think it is worth noting. It's Freiburg, the first time they've been in a European final. Well done them. It's only the second time Aston Villa have been in a European final, but a much more established club in European football history, of course. The Villa, a very historic club. And they won the European Cup, of course, beaten Bayern Munich in the final in 1982. I still remember that. Game, going to half time and kicking the ball out the back door. My sister just went at half time and coming back in and watching the whole drama with Jimmy Rimmer, who of course was the joint first substitute ever on a bench in the European Cup final when they allowed substitutes for the 1968 European Cup final, both Benfica and Manchester United just having substitute goalkeepers, and Manchester United's was Jimmy Rimmer, young Jimmy Rimmer, who never got on, and then finally, after years at Arsenal and what have you, been a really good player, he becomes Aston Villa goalkeeper and is an absolute legend there, and he, I don't know if he's part of the Aston Villa team that won promotion back to the top flight. I think they were doing the 3rd division, weren't they, the Villa? There's great footage of this game against Plymouth Argyle, I think it is, at Villa Park, when the whole end's absolutely packed, like 40,000 there flying through the mud. But I don't know if he's part of that team, but eventually they won the league, the English Championship in 1981, just ahead of kind of Liverpool and Bobby Robson's great Ipswich side of the late 70s, early 80s, and Jimmy Rimmer finally gets to put the following season in the European Cup final. Finally, it's going to be his moment. He's in the European Cup final, and after 9 minutes, he gets an injury and he can't play. And not only that, but the one and only Nigel Spink comes on to replace him and has an epic, keeps a clean sheet. And Jimmy Rimmer's very bad about that. I've seen him interviewed about it, and he's not even trying to kid on. Just these things happen. It's just he's basically 2 European Cup winners' medals, and he played 9 minutes total over those 2 for 2 different teams. The amazing thing being, of course, that Les Sealey, who played for Aston Villa, also played for Manchester United. He actually played for Manchester United in the European final, the Cup Winners' Cup final in 91, and he was a West Ham man, and also was the nephew of Alan Sealey. And I think Les Sealey ends up getting replaced again at Aston Villa by Nigel Spink, the veteran Nigel Spink, years later. Despite having played in the European final for Manchester United, it was a Cup Winners' Cup final for Les Sealey, and that's a thing for him being a West Ham man, because his uncle Alan Sealey scored the only 2 goals of the 1965 Cup Winners' Cup final, which was won by West Ham at Wembley against TSV München 1860. It's English against Germans, claret and amber stuff there, and the 2 of them died early of heart attacks, a kind of congenital condition running through that family. So I'm not trying to avoid the point, but I think it's notable that Freiburg, a German team, are in the Europa League final. A wee pattern that you might not be noticing 2 years ago, of course, it was Bayer Leverkusen, who totally dominated in Germany, domestic, unbeaten, won the League and Cup double, but they lost to Lukman of Atalanta in Dublin in the Europa League final, and 2 years before that, of course, it was ourselves losing on penalties in Seville to Eintracht Frankfurt, but they were in their second UEFA Cup / Europa League. 2 years before that, the final was in Cologne. I mean, it was Inter against Sevilla, but the final was in Cologne in the lockdown Europa League final. So there's been a German thing every second year, a wee pattern. That's quite, because the Europa League / UEFA Cup, because it's the same trophy, it's easier to connect them as the same tournament than it is with the Fairs Cup, which was organised by a kind of committee. It was kind of FIFA-ish, wasn't officially UEFA, but it stopped in 1970, 71, and then the UEFA Cup starts in 71, 72. And if you want to tell Leeds United fans and Newcastle fans that their clubs haven't won European trophies, then that's up to you. The Fairs Cup is the UEFA Cup, is the Europa League. And in because the first ever UEFA Cup final was between two English teams. Spurs beating Wolves. The last Europa League final was between two English teams. Spurs beating Man United. I can say that just now because by the time you say that it'll not be relevant, but it's Aston Villa playing. And the Germans, Borussia Mönchengladbach lost the 73 UEFA Cup final to Liverpool, and then they hammered 20 Enschede in the 75 UEFA Cup final, and then they beat Crvena Zvezda Beograd, Restar Belgrade in the 1979 UEFA Cup final, and then 1980. And I remember that's what I grew up with, 1980, the late 70s, early 80s, when all my European final memories and what have you start. You weren't watching the games live then. You're lucky if you saw a European final without a British team on the telly. That's why I felt like the Cup Winners' Cup 79. Got to see Barcelona and Fortuna Dusseldorf, Germans again, 79. And 1980, though, it just really peaked for the Germans because Borussia Mönchengladbach lost the final in 1980 to our old pals from Frankfurt, Eintracht. But the semi-finals that year was all Germans. And in the quarter-final, there was 5 German teams in the UEFA Cup that year. That used to be like that. That's why it fluctuated as to what was more important, what was the second most important tournament, because you had that level of quality. These German teams, they'd all the semi-finalists. This is all teams that finished at the top end of the league, because if you got in the Cup Winners' Cup, you could win the Cup. You could get relegated the same season you win your domestic cup competition. But the quality of the league, the teams that were pushing to win the Bundesliga or the English First Division or the Spanish La Liga, the ones that couldn't quite make it but the top end of the table, they were arriving in force in the UEFA Cup. Now they would all just be straight into the Champions League, which means it's not only the best, it's always been the best tournament and the hardest tournament to win, the European Cup or the Champions League, but now the concentration of quality is on the Champions League as well, and there's a big drop-off to the Europa League and a even bigger drop-off to the Conference League. But it used to be more kind of, it was less dramatically staggered back in my day growing up. But there was 5 German teams in it, and they all got as far as the Bundesliga could get, because it was Germans putting out Germans in the quarter-final, the 5th German team, and all the other ones went through. The only German team that went out as a result of an all-German quarter-final before the semi-final stage. And then it's 4 teams in the semi, Kaiserslautern. So that was, I grew up with that being a thing, and it's quite good to see the Germans slowly creeping back into, it wasn't good the way we saw it in 2022, but they're definitely having an influence. Good luck to both sides tonight in that one. Always going to favour the British sides, well, nearly always going to favour the British side in a European final, but I'm looking forward to watching it, and maybe that'll take my head. Am I trying to change something? I've had a lot of abuse for Celtic fans the past few days, because I made a mistake of picking up a wee podcast, a wee short. It was just an excerpt from my reaction on Saturday, after the game on Saturday there, the last post-match reaction pod of the season. And I know that there's a lot of Celtic fans, a lot of people who don't like Rangers out there, fans of whatever club, any other Scottish club, who have got this thing going where you're a new club, you're a brand new club, you started in 2012, liquidation means liquidation, and I can get where they're coming from. I get the justification. I certainly felt like that myself at the time. Something was definitely over. It was a horrible thing, but yeah, you look into the legal side of it, and then also you support them, so you might believe that everything's absolutely fine and UEFA approve of it and blah blah. And let's say, I know all that, but for some reason, I'm not saying I didn't do this as a wind up. I didn't actually do this as a wind up. I just clipped this bit, which I thought was quite good, because it was a line about how I accept the fact that Celtic have won the league, and historically, as far as I was concerned, we 55 we won in 2022, Celtic now going ahead of us because that's their 56th title, and I'm realising that's why Celtic fans aren't making a big deal of the fact it's 56. They didn't make a big deal last season of the fact it was 55 because they don't want to acknowledge. I'm actually slow to the game here. I'm slow to pick up on this. I'm also slow to pick up on the fact that Celtic fans think we constantly harp on, we call it 55, because we're in denial about the fact that it's title number one back in 2021. I just thought we're obsessed about it because it took us 10 years to win the thing. We've got to get 50. Next title's 55. Four lads had a dream. 54 titles, we're still going strong. To change that, the first time I sang that, and I sang 55 titles, that was as hard as, it was around about the same time, changing from God Save the Queen to God Save the King. You keep forgetting, singing these two songs that we sing to ourselves every day, every morning when we get up, hand on chest in front of the Union Jack, and at night time before we go to bed, and the lyrics change now. It's just changed. I didn't realise all this kind of stuff. But that's fine. I can see everybody's point of view. That's what football's all about. Myopia and arguments. But I'd put us just be excerpt from pod about how Rangers. This is the first time, and I thought it was quite a notable thing. If you believe, and it's just a facts that Rangers have won 55 top flight titles, then the last time Celtic were ahead of us on league titles won was I think it's 1928. 1928. That's the first year Rangers for a while had been ahead. I think we went on to 17 titles. Celtic were on 16 around about 1928 or 20. It's basically 98 years, the best part of a century, since Celtic have been ahead of us on Scottish titles won, on Scottish top flight titles won. I mean, there's another argument there about Rangers having 3 lower league titles to add. We wouldn't insult ourselves, but we don't want that talked about, so everybody's got stuff to be upset about when it comes to these kind of stats. But I put this thing out there saying we were the first to 20 titles, we were the first to 30 titles, we were the first to 40 titles, we were the first to hit 50 titles. We need to be the first to hit 60. We need to avenge this dishonour. I genuinely swear in Davy Cooper's left foot, I did not mean this as an insult, as a wind up. I don't really do the wind up stuff. I just thought it sounded quite nice. It was quite, because you do the clips, you put the clips. There's two different types of clips you can put out. One that's up to 3 minutes long, one that's 15 seconds long. And I put out 2. I put out one of each for each pod that I do, each long form pod like this that I do. And I thought that's kind of, from the first to 40, first to 50, we've got to be the first to 60. We've got to make sure. I hope the owners were watching that. This is before I realised that Cavenagh and Marathi were on the pitch, or the pitch side and the track side at Falkirk talking to the fans on Saturday. So hopefully somebody pointed that out to them. The humiliation. I thought I was talking about humiliation. Also, there's a nice thing about we're on 55, Celtic are on 56, and it's the 49ers that we want to get us to 60. You're throwing in all these numbers. It's quite kind of poetic. It was nice to be. Yeah, I just thought it's good, but it's just you rat, hun, zombie, pig, like this. What's some of the abuse I'm getting, And folk coming and going, you've only got title number 1. That's actually quite a good thing as well, because if we win the title next season, I like that as a backup plan. It's quite exciting as well, like the starting again idea, because there's only been 11 clubs that have been champions of Scotland, and one of them's Third Lanark. Zombies, man. They're trying to get themselves going in the amateur leagues and all that. We know the story there. Phoenix Club. You let your club die. You let your club. No, he didn't actually. It was the chairman. It was just the owner was a complete scumbag. But the Third Lanark won it once. Motherwell once. Kilmarnock once. Dundee and Dundee United once each. Did I say Motherwell? Probably. But the only next that's on 2 titles is Dumbarton. So if we win the league next season, that's the next time we win the league. Bang, that's us. We're on 2 titles as well. We equal with Dumbarton. And next, Hearts failed to get to 5. They failed to get to title number 5, it would be for them. And that would have made them outright third best, as far as I'm concerned, behind Rangers and Celtic, on Scottish top tier titles won. So they're still on 4 alongside Hibs and Aberdeen. The 3 clubs are all on 4 titles each. So it'd be like if we get to 3 in a row, you could say, we're on 4 at least, the same as Hibs and Hearts and Aberdeen. And then if we win 4, it's like, Rangers are soaring ahead of, and then we can worry about. By that point, we'll be. So it would take us on, if we're on 1, as far as folk are concerned just now. Folk that hate Rangers think we're on 1, but I think we're on 55. By the time we get to what the Rangers haters would see as 5, we need to win 4, which would only put us on 59. 50, no, but another 3. So that's Aye, 50, 7, 8. So we need another 2 after that to get to. There seem to. I don't want anybody thinking I'm being too cheap. I don't want Celtic fans thinking I'm trying to do this. Oh, always next year FC that I'm trying to make out I'm happier than I really am. And I don't want Rangers fans to be thinking, Christ, Alec, wake up, son. Wake up. Always next year, FC. You know, you think it's all right to keep Danny Röhl as manager, as head coach. It's just failure. Wake up to what's actually happened this season. It's no part of a project going forward. It's another disaster. I don't want anybody thinking, basically, there's going to be optimism in this podcast, but I don't want anybody, whatever club you support, to think for a second that it hasn't absolutely gutted me over the last couple of weeks. Because there's a moment, a week back on Sunday, where Rangers officially couldn't win the title by losing at Parkhead. And then there's the moments on Saturday just after, I think Celtic did it on purpose. I think Celtic probably went 2-1 up against Hearts at the very moment the final whistle went at Falkirk. Because by the time I'd packed up my laptop and all that in the kitchen where I was watching our game on Rangers TV and walked through to the living room, they were already 2-1 up, just going into injury time. But they just scored. It was at the 86th minute, and it was sick for Hearts, 1986, but it wasn't allowed until like the 88th minute by the time they'd done the VAR checks and all that. So that's 88, 1888, 1988 double season. That's Celtic's number 88 in the prisons. It's for Heil Hitler. It's the 8th letter of the alphabet twice. But that's the Nazi lowriders, the white supremacists wear that and the shamrock. And I'm just saying, I just like to point that out to folk. But that was all very poetic and sick. And I was like, here we go. And I just watched the injury time. It has an effect on you. On Sunday, I don't know what your Sunday was like, but you notice it was peeing down, and then there was hailstones. After weeks of sunshine, that all seemed absolutely fine to me. Pathetic fallacy. That seemed to make sense. And my wife was heading into town. I'm just through all the podding, all the pods on Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, just brutal stuff. Totally over emotional, ranting and raving, and trying to talk to folk. So many of you been so nice with the messages getting back to us, especially after that pod, the last reaction pod on Saturday. Thanks so much, folks. And I'm so sorry I haven't replied to everybody. I'm going to try and get that done. I was starting to reply to folk and realising, no, you're talking about stuff that should be in the next pod. So I'll do this and then I'll get back to properly replying to everybody, because some of the stuff's lovely. I'm so grateful for it, but I'm like just shattered. I just went away for the laptop. What was the English game? Was it Manchester United were at home to Forest? I'm just that kind of. I'm not even interested in it. I should probably watch a film or something. But I'll just let it kind of. I had to break up my pod, to timestamp the pod the night before, sitting on the laptop in front of the telly, with the Man U handball in the background, just like I'm done with VAR and the arguments and stuff like that. I've had enough. I need to get away from this. So my missus is like, oh, I'm heading into town for a couple. I'm like, she's going to just walk to the station. It's like a quarter an hour walk. The station she was going to go to, there's a few stations around about here. You then get the low level into town. And I was like, I'll take you, I'll get a lift. No, because I've just been posted missing me with this Fitbit stuff recently. She's like, all right, thanks. And just the way she said, oh, thanks. I was like, oh, that's terrible. She seems more grateful than she should. And I was like, the big man. Brownie points, Anderson. This could play my cards right here. When she comes back, there could be. I was feeling kind of, I'm a man. What I was kind of forgetting was that I'd started Sunday waking up, doing that stupid thing of picking up my phone, because I checked to see if I get any messages regarding the pod, any death threats. And then for some reason going to Twitter, which I only like to go into Twitter to abuse Elon Musk and right-wing folk, just to retweet stuff. I don't like to engage because of Elon Musk, but you need it for your work and you need contacts through Twitter. It's like Bezos with Amazon. They've got you cornered, these bastards. So I wanted that, and of course, there's just tons of stuff. Because I'm like Rangers Twitter, there's hundreds of stuff. But the game the day before, but the Celtic game, nothing to do with Rangers. It's just all Rangers fans slaughtering the Celtic fans for the hypocrisy of what happened and the reaction to what happened at Parkhead, and the pitch invasion, that after all the nonsense that was getting thrown our way after we stopped them getting as far as our players. at Ibrox in that cup game back in March. But you're not properly awake. I've not been drinking. I've not been drinking for the past month or so. I'm going to wait this weekend. I'm going to be drinking, but I just woke up. I just got half awake. I picked up my phone. It's guy Andy Muirhead. It's Andy Muirhead. Hello, Andy. So I think Celtic daft, Celtic nutter. Look at him, a Rangers nutter, but he's really bitter. The nasty stuff, and I think he's got a tick, tick on his account, and he used to do I don't know if he still does. It was a blog or a website or something. This is like 15 years ago or something, and I thought it had a really neutral name. It was something to do with the Scottish football podcast or something. I thought, and I was at the time, I had a lot of spare time. I was writing for stuff. I was just not spare time at all, but I just wanted to write for as much stuff as possible. Just the way I like to pod as much as possible just now. So I sent in something to him. I just, would you like this? Do you want submissions? Are you looking for folk to? Aye, send me something in, And I sent in something, and it was about Rangers. I can't remember what it was. It was something to do with Barry Ferguson. And he gets back to me going, no, but he's a bigot and he's really vicious. He's a dirty player, or something along those lines. And I'm like, what? This seemed a bit weird. I don't think that's the case. Well, I'm not going to be printing that, or I'll make some changes to reflect the fact that I think he's an awful person, basically, Barry Ferguson. And I thought, I think I was probably slagging Barry for how he left what he did under Paul Le Guin. I had my real own problems with Barry, but I just remember thinking, this is weird. Is this guy like a total Celtic fan or something? But it was, he says, you can submit something else in if you want, but I'm not taking that. And I thought, I think we'll just call that a day, mate. And it was only like somebody who's pretending they're, just dress a bit camp or they're bisexual, and then you find out they're actually full on gay. That was the Andy has revealed himself through the years. I saw it in passing on social media that he's just a full-on Rangers hate. And so he was stuff in there about, he was retweeting stuff about Tony Bloom being a Zionist fascist, that horrible anti-Semitic thing of making sure you call, when you're slagging, Israelis, or the Israel policy and with Palestine, make sure you throw in fascism, so that they kind of accuse you of anti-Semitism, but it's the most anti-Semitic thing you could ever say is bringing up the Holocaust to just, well, they're committing genocide. I get all that, but just like, is this really that for Tony Bloom when he was caught? But he'd reclipped this thing of a little bit of footage, about 5-second clip of Celtic fans heading for Lawrence Shankland on the pitch, and I would like to say after the game, but of course it wasn't. The game finished 31 seconds early and was never restarted. But Shankland's doing that thing of he's going in first. He's just leaning towards folk to make sure, because there's 60,000 folk be calling him all the Hun bastards of the day for the last hour and a half, and every time he plays against Celtic. So he's quite right to be thinking, and it's also the lowest moment of his professional career, and he's got to put up with this in his workplace. Folk hearing towards him with the and there's Celtic fans. I've seen longer clips of Celtic fans going and going, oh wait a minute, that's out of order. I mean, they shouldn't be on the pitch, these Celtic fans, but they've got a limit. They're just on to celebrate, and they're saying to other guys, no, you can't go up to the Hearts players. That's totally unsporting. It is a sport. And it was this whole thing. I suddenly realised what was happening. It's like, no, it's because Hearts had said some of the players were, I think, potentially totally abused, and there was potential assaults going on. And the same thing that happened to us on the pitch at Hampden in 2016. So Celtic fans immediately went in the defensive, and it was like, he's assaulting Celtic supporters. Shankland's assaulting. I'm like, you're fucking joking. Because I wasn't properly awake, I'm actually still lying in bed, and I just retweeted it going, it took me ages to get to sleep, so I was having a Sunday lie-in, and I just retweeted it saying, oh, apparently this proves, and I don't even like to go on Twitter these days, and I'll just retweet stuff about politics, but I rarely go in and actually, I'm on Blue Sky when I actually want to chat about stuff, but I just retweeted it saying apparently this shows that Celtic fans were totally innocent, or like Shankland's to blame. Apparently this proves that Shankland's to blame for everything that happened yesterday. So Rangers fans straight away like, retweet. I'm like, oh no, this is just a matter of time. And then suddenly, I know it just proves that he wasn't assaulted, and I'm like, it's a 5-second clip. It might prove that he wasn't actually assaulted in that 5 seconds. It doesn't prove what's happened, before that, and then getting himself down the tunnel. And the general point I'm trying to make is, can you really be claiming any kind of innocence in this? When you, but no, legally, of course, Hearts have said that some of the players were potentially. There was rumours of them being assaulted and abused. So this is Celtic fans coming to the defence, and I'm wrong. I mean, I am in a technicality. I am totally wrong, and I'm like, just fucking get it. And I think, I knew I was so late. I just deleted it, and I just put up a message saying, "Nah, I'm fucking out." And it's obviously Celtic did nothing wrong, and it's they're totally innocent of all charges. Don't ever get involved in Twitter again. I'm not really into the just chasing traffic kind of thing, and that's why I don't want that in my life. And it's like, yeah, you did say something right. You were technically, you're just no up for this, Alec. You're no sharp enough. You're just thinking folk are going to be kind of mature about it, but you're being immature about it. I'm just lying in my bed there, just like a real man. I'm just later on. I'm thinking, the wife's quite happy that I'm taking for a wee run to the station just voluntarily. She doesn't even have to nag me. I'm like, oh, look after you, dog. She's like, oh, what a man I've got there. Yeah. Whereas about half an hour earlier, I'd been lying in my kit going, tape. Well, actually, I think it proves that Lauren Shankland's doing really well to help. I've done the tape. And you and your toast. Make me toast. I'm on my phone. Leave me alone. Just tape. I'm dieting. No, just 2 fried eggs. And a tatty scone. Yeah, insensitive back. I'm trying to diet here. I take tape. I'm just give me some privacy. I'm doing really impressive, Alec. Well, you actually said that Lauren Shankly had been punched in the face, and then so I delete that and I try to sort that out, and I go to have my breakfast now, and I've said to my wife, I'll get Lauren into turn up. Thanks very much. She's not. And it's the end of the 2 minutes. Basically, the motor's right outside the house. We've only got one motor. We've both got a key. We've got our own keys for the motor. And there's one way I got to the station that we're going to go to. The quickest way to get there, I do a wee 3-point turn. And I go, it's like a 20-second drive to the end of our street if you're going really slowly. And then you take a left, and there's a slight hill, and it's about 5 seconds to get to the end of that. So basically, what I managed to, and then I had to go and get my key, pick up my key, and put my shoes on, obviously. This is with thanks very much. You gave me a lift. So basically, from there, we're leaving the house to get in the motor to get to the station, to driving for 25 seconds. What I've done is I've got my shoes, put my shoes on. Oh Christ, I can hardly tie these laces. And I'm into the kitchen, and there's a wee dish. I've got a wee dish with all my keys, so she knows to grab her keys. So we'll both go with our keys. If we're not in the house at the same time, it's not a case of just shutting the door behind you and thinking the other one's going to be in. So I've got my key, and I've got keys for this wee thing here, this wee extension, and keys for the front door and the back door of the actual house, and the car keys. And there's these windows, these kind of French door windows, door things here that I never use. But there's keys for them as well, and I've got them on a wee china it's a wee ceramic flower basket. It's very masculine. And I'm getting in there, it's going, right, that's my house keys there. I put them, I put a bit right at the top, it was my car key. So I pick that up to get into the other keys, and eventually find the keys that I need for the house to make sure I'm going to get back in, because not shut the door behind. And then I'm going, oh, where's the car key? Have you got your car key? She's like, it's in your horn. Oh, I picked it. So, and then they get to the front door and I get into the motor, and that's a lot of groaning because I'm at the size of my gut. And I'll just do this 3-point turn, and I'm like, am I hitting that wall? Am I hitting that wall? Behind the bins. What about the bins? They've put the bit. No, you're fine. You're fine. Just I can't see it. I think that's because of my the size. I'm so fat, I better lose some weight, and I can't get in the motor. It's like a 15-point turn, and then I'll go along. Before we even get to the end of the street, there's these cones either side of the road. I'm like, oh, what is these about? She's like, I saw them earlier in the week. I think it's. Why you don't tell me there's cones at the end of the street? I mean, they could be picking up if they stop folk parking, it's all going to back up, and folk are going to be parking outside our house. We're going to be, but I hate all that when that happens. It gets really tense in the street and all that. And then I take the left, and she's like, no, it's just, I think I'll just stay in the verges. So that's all weird. This area, you don't go that way, so you don't notice all the cones and all that. And then I took the left to go down the wee hill, and I'm like, are these sticking? Is the gears sticking? Is that a bit sticky? Are you finding it sticky when you're driving your working them? No, because I took it in a quick fit a few. And by the bottom of the hill, the two were pissing myself. Because I'd gone from, I'm your man, baby, to I've been a man, baby. I was on the phone whining like a fucking Wayne all morning in a fight at primary school. And then in the 30 seconds it's taken us to get going to the station of this. Where's my keys? Oh my God, I can't bend there. I'm going to hit that wall, no bins. Where's with the cones? Where's with the cones? And I thought, motor's squeaking, the motor's no. What? I just took it to quick for the service. Yeah. Hey, ladies. I'm your man. I'm the man you want. It's hurting. It's hurting a lot. How you doing, folks? This is your FATEC final midweek debrief, which is going to be a final debrief of the season, the 2025-2026 just ended for Rangers, and also having a wee look at the fact that Danny Röhl has stayed. He's been given the go-ahead to be here, to be our coach next season, be our head coach next season. He's got the whole Jordan Belfort thing, that the meme, the DiCaprio. I'm not effing leaving. I'm not effing leaving. And the F stands for Freiheit und Fußball. Better get into this just now, because the World Cup squad has been announced yesterday by Steve Clarke. We can feel ourselves getting pulled into the World Cup will take over. Nobody will be interested in anything to do with club football from the 11th of June until the 19th of July. And we've also got Mikey Moore is saying his goodbyes on Instagram, and that's him officially. His loan period's officially come at the end. He's saying goodbye, but we don't know if Spurs are going to get relegated or not yet. We'll find out about that on Sunday. So that's already the first live transfer rumour. There's so much been said by our chairman and our new CEO coming to the fore, really, in this presser they had on Sunday, which will be getting released in dribs and drabs on Monday. And Tuesday, what's your attitude towards the season? I can't help myself thinking that there's a flash on the horizon that's blinding of Rangers' optimism before it goes into the full mushroom cloud implosion. I think we're still going to do it, and it's I know the way and the speed with which the announcement was made about Danny Röhl staying confirmed. I think the fact that it was confirmed at all on the Sunday all gets me right into the groove instantly for 2026. 2027, and I know that's you're very much kind of. Do you think we should have kept him though, Alec? I know you think this. I think this is happening. I think this is a revolution. It's a very soft one over the course of this season. The revolution, but it's going to be hard now. It's going to be hard forevermore under the 49ers. This is the close season where I think, having found their partner, having found the love and basically wanting to be involved and feeling cosy and comfortable with each other over the course of this season, Cavenagh and Marathi, as one side of the couple, Rangers and us as the other side of the couple, it's Scottish football being the they've dropped the Viagra, they've dropped the blue pill, and they're ready to get hard and start shafting. Sorry, that's a terrible. It's maybe heat. If somebody was saying to me, the trying Scotsman always gets in touch. Thanks very much, mate. And he was saying to me all day, Alec, after my post-match reaction to the game at Falkirk, he's saying, "Oh, yes, what's that? You haven't even done a heat quote. You didn't mention heat until right to the end of your pod. Your favourite film. That's how broken you are by. Oh, that's totally broken by the whole thing. Don't kid yourself on that. I'm just trying to cover up my depression with kind of vapid optimism. I'm totally broken by the fact we had such a terrible season in the end up. But I think I just figured that the whole thing with us keeping Danny Röhl in my head, it's that bit where they know they've been rumbled, they know the cops are onto them, they know the Al Pacino's team of cops have broken into them, have cracked into them. The heat is on. The heat are on them. The heat is coming round the corner, and he's saying De Niro playing Neil McCauley has got his guys together, and he's saying to them, right, what are we going to do here? What do you want to do? We've got this big bank robbery that we're supposed to be doing, but we're definitely being trailed by the police. They're going to end up breaking into us. We could all get arrested. Whatever. And Michael Cherrito, played by the amazing Tom Sizemore, the late Tom Sizemore, saying to him, whatever, Neil, whatever our role we use. No, in this one, Michael, in this one, you're on your own. And then he goes up to him, Tom Sizemore goes up to him in one of the best bits of overacting in the whole film, and he says to him, do you figure this is the best thing to do? Is this the best thing to do? He's asking his friend, Neil McCauley, do you think that's the best thing to do? And it was the trying Scotsman who'd get back to me, of course, Tom Sizemore, that Michael Cherrito gets killed in the ensuing bank raid. And he said, when you're at range, you get wet. My friend Michael, when it rains, he didn't have to be there. He knew the risks. When it rains, you get wet. That's what De Niro's character, Neil McCauley, says to the love of his life that he's just met. He says that to explain what happened to his mate Michael, because he did warn him, and he warns him there in that scene. He warns him and he says, Elaine takes good care of you, you get T-bonds, you get real estate, you get plenty put away. If I was you, I would stay clear of this. And that's what folk don't realise. The code, or the hard cases, the idiots that watch Heat and they think, oh yeah, that's pure hard. Do not get yourself attached to anything. You cannot walk out on in 30 seconds flat when you feel the heat coming round the corner. That's a lot of Rangers fans are doing that just now. The boys leaving that game as soon as Martin Boyle scored for Hibs the other night, the last home game of the season. There's two boys in front of me got up and left. And by boys, I mean guys in their 40s and 50s. And they got up and just left at that point. They turned it off. And it's the end of the season. Who cares and that? But it's just a lot of it's very empty stadium. That there's this kind of win or fuck off thing. Win or fuck off. I will detach myself from you in 30 seconds. This is the coda. This is a great line in Heat at the beginning of Heat. But it's nobody really realises it's actually coming. It's been undermined from the very moment, the night before De Niro had said. It's been undermined from the moment he meets Edie, and Edie becomes the thing that he doesn't want to detach himself from in 30 seconds flat. This is why he's suddenly telling his pal to stay away, stay out of this. They've been in the joint together and that. They're hardened criminals, the two of them. They're total hard cases. They off folk at the drop of a hat. These guys will rock and roll. But he's saying to him, your wife Elaine, she takes good care of you, because now De Niro's character, Neil McCauley, he feels love. He says, for me, the risk is worth the reward. It's worth a stretch because I'm going away afterwards. He's going to go away with Edie to New Zealand. If he's going to do some more jail time after it, he doesn't really care, because he wants the money to finance the lifestyle of living with somebody he loves that he never wants to walk away from. Never mind in 30 seconds flat, and I feel that's what it is with Rangers. Heat's an LA crime saga. LA, California, San Francisco, the 49ers. The Super Bowl gets mentioned. That's Chris Shaheerless at the start, at the very point where De Niro's about to tell him, you should walk away from it, and you can't attach yourself to in 30 seconds flat. Walk away from it if you feel the heat coming round the corner. That's what Jimmy McElwee used to say that to us in the yard, in the jail, and he's saying it's Vegas. The Super Bowl's cleaned me out. It's Val Kilmer. Vegas, the Super Bowl's cleaned me out. That's why he needs the job. That's why he needs more money, even though they're doing all these high-end jobs, these high-end robberies. He needs money, and I keep meaning to look up who was the Super Bowl that year. Heat was 1995, so maybe it's the start of 95. I don't know if it was the 49ers, but the Super Bowl gets mentioned. It's 49ers. They're in there as far as I'm concerned, and that's where De Niro hits them with the line about don't get attached yourself, and you can't walk out in 30 seconds flat. And he's talking about Ashley Judd, Charlene Shaheerless, and he's saying that for me, the sun rises and sets with her man. Okay. If you love it, you love it. You stick by it. That's how I feel about Rangers. That's how I feel about Danny Röhl staying. Don't detach yourself and you can't walk out in 30 seconds. We want somebody who's going to be here all the time. It's consistency. You saw Arsenal winning the league finally, first time in 22 years. How long has Mikel Arteta been there? 5.5 years. That's like 200 years in football these days. Maybe not Arsenal when they had the Arsene Wenger years, but without winning the league. That's finishing second. Was it 3 times out of 4 seasons? Finishing second, and eventually he does it, and they stuck by him. It gets there. When's the last time we won the league? Under Steven Gerrard in his 3rd season. Stick by it. That's always what we should do as far as I'm concerned. Debrief of the season and reaction to Danny Röhl. Stay in pod, coming to you in association with Gersnet. Check out Gersnet, the last Gersnet pod of the season. I think it was on Sunday night there, and it was John, Stuart and Alan. I haven't had a chance to watch it myself yet, so check that out, folks. Watch that pod if you will. I'm sponsored by Gersnet, and I'm also sponsored by Dead Rubber. If Tom Miller, Tom, commentator of Rangers TV, is to be believed, and I believe him intrinsically. I always believe Tom Miller of Rangers TV. He told us at that plastic pitch at Falkirk, that was the last game it would be getting played on it this season ever. It's getting changed. I think they've got the new pitch outside. He was saying, probably between the Falkirk Stadium and Grangemouth oil refinery, we're going to get the new plastic pitch, a better standard of plastic pitch, better standard of fake pitch in next season. So that was the last game that's going to be played on that surface. It was dead rubber. We're playing a dead rubber on dead rubber that was no longer going to be. It was it going to meet its makers. It shuffled off this mortal coil. That was dead rubber that we were playing that game on Saturday, and how appropriate when Danny Röhl first come up against Falkirk at Ibrox, it was 0-0. 0-0 at Ibrox, as he tried to just find some way of making this team that he'd inherited from Russell Martin less beatable, never mind winning. And the next time he played Falkirk, it was on that rubber. It was on that plastic pitch, and we're 2-0 down to him, and then we scalped him. 6-3 in the end up, and it was beautiful. And this was before we'd a weekend off before we would go into the split. We're a point off the top. We were maybe not the favourites to win the title, but we fancied ourselves. The entire Rangers support was up for it. We thought, this is great. Look at how we're scoring the goals. And then we've gone back there again. And that was the last game we won. It was the last time we've been at Falkirk. The next game we win is the next time we're at Falkirk, and we've lost the 4 games in between. The title challenge is dead. There's folk at Celtic fans who'll tell me my club died, but it's dead. And it was indeed a zombie version of that previous game at Falkirk, where every goal we scored was making us think, yeah, beauty, oh, this is amazing. The attacking football, we can do this. We're going to win this title. We're honing in this title. We went into the split a point off the top. We've ended the split. Just 5 games later, 10 points off the top. And to go out there and score a couple of goals in the first 7 minutes was almost an insult to the memory that we'd had the last time. It was this horrible impersonation, this empty facsimile taunting us of what we did the last time at Falkirk. We won this game 5-2. We won by 3 goals again at Falkirk, but it was dead rubber. They see the challenge was dead, and it was so... It was Zulte Waregem, Michael Beale. Zulte Waregem, I've said that before. Zulte Waregem was one of the team names that makes you think you can speak Flemish. They make you think you can speak. They're like one Borussia Mönchengladbach, maybe makes you feel that you can speak a bit of German, just being able to say it. Borussia Mönchengladbach. And Zulte Waregem was the Belgian or the Flemish Belgian version of that. Zulte Waregem, you know, and that's where Michael Beale's popped up at. He's their head coach. And remember, Michael Beale, when he came back to Rangers, he actually did better, I think, than Danny Röhl. He comes back that same pattern that we're still in that same pattern. Those of us who want to keep Danny Röhl, and it wasn't a massively, not 100% confident in that decision, but those of us who want to keep Danny Röhl are saying we can't keep sacking managers. But this is what we keep doing. We don't sack them. They come in the October to December period to take over from the previous manager who has just been sacked. And then, well, February, they come in mid-season anyway at some point, and then they do really well, new manager bounce, but it's tailed off before the end of that season, and we give them the pre-season, we stick by them, and they're gone by the following October. So all those who think we should have sacked Danny Röhl, they're waiting. October, November, they'll be proved right. It's a gamble from my point of view. I'm not trying to say we've been proved right so far, but and Michael Beale come in and Bayer Leverkusen, that's his first game, a friendly, in the middle of the World Cup. He beats them 3-0. No, Florian Wirtz is playing for Bayer Leverkusen that day. They were in the middle of the mid-season break anyway. They were knackered. They were no match fit, and they had a few players at the old World Cup, just back for the World Cup. So it was a great, and then we won our first 2 games at home to Hibs, or away to Aberdeen, 3-2, mad games, and then we start beating folk 2-0, 3-0 under Michael Beale. He loses at Parkhead. I think it's the first domestic. Loses in the League Cup final, the Scottish Cup semi, but it's narrow defeat. And then basically the only reason we lost any games to the end of the season in the post-split, we drew 1 game, was because he did a decent thing and put on Alan McGregor to play, and Alan McGregor had completely gone fitness-wise by that point, and he lets in 1, if not 2 goals that night, and we draw with Hearts. Lawrence Shankland scoring in the first minute of the game for Hearts. But we draw with them. That's the only points we dropped in our post-split. We'd won 4 and drew 1 of our post-split fixtures. So in many ways, he had a much healthier record. Michael Beale was much more promising. He'd been there with Stephen Gerrard. He was the man sorting out the tactics and all that with Steve. It seems in many ways like more of a gamble now that we're keeping Danny Röhl, who's been in Der Bild, the Bild this week, the German, I know it's Der Bild, I think it's Bild, isn't it? The German magazine, German newspaper, saying really nice things about Rangers, telling us that we've got a CEO that's really nice. They're telling us that we've got a sporting director that he reports to. We don't know that as a support. We think it was Derek on Rangers Review. We've seen he's probably talking about Stig Inge Bjorneby, and he's really pressurised, but he loves it. He loves the challenge. He loves the fact they can win stuff with Rangers, and you can do well in international competitions as well. You know, so he's definitely up for it. I think there's almost a part of us that thinks, no wonder he's up for it, because he's not good enough to get any other job. I think that the tide of public opinion is turning against Danny Röhl. The pivotal point of the season for Danny Röhl for this season was post-split, because it just collapsed when we went into the split, the top 6 split in the SPFL Premiership. It collapsed But the pivotal point of the project, the 49ers takeover project, I think, is Danny Röhl getting us back into contention at all. Reflection pod, I've talked about that. My name's Alec Anderson. You think I'm not a human, and my heart is made of stone, but I never had no problems, 'cause my body's pretty strong. I'm a man, yes I am, and I can't wait to love you so. I'm a man, yes I am, and I can't wait to love you so. Yep, my name is Barbara Streisand. You might know me from such movies as Funny Face, The Way We Were, and Yentl. Totally shagged Chris Christopherson, so I have. He was all over me. Omar Sharif done him and all. You know, he was wanting it big time. So get Nick Nolte, Lorenzo's Oil. was certainly something slippy and runny going on down the side of his. Like I've been at Robert Redford though, but nah, it's not. No, one of the most beautiful men in the world. No up close. No with the studio lights off and with the makeup on. It's the gingers, the age, really, a lot of pock marks, the freckles. No into that at all. I mean, he was into it, of course, you know. The Bee Gees. I am a woman in love, and you give me the bulk. You get far too many teeth, and you're really hairy. I'm no into guys that have got more makeup and hair than me, you know. So all the good brothers fancied a bit of this, you know. But they're only human, nothing against them, but no. They get the big KB. I am Barbara Streisand. I'm no Barbara Streisand. Is that you? Did you pick that? Is that why the auto cue's not working? So I'll go total Ron Burgundy and just read off my script here. You sit with your buggers, man. It's me. You know that it's a big team. The Fat Egg podcast, a massive effort. I don't know personally. I don't really know anything about football. I know I don't even care about Rangers or Celtic or MD. I'm a tennis fan and carpet balls. That's what I'm into. The tennis and carpet balls. But we just put it all together. You know, it's a big kind of. Obviously, there's so much detail goes into the plot. It's so professionally done. I don't think it's much a secret. There's a kind of 40-man team, 40 man and women team, and everyone in between that, right behind the scenes. You know, just it's all kind of University of Strathclyde and Glasgow Uni English literature students. That's about half a dozen, isn't it? Aye, Sebastian, did you go to URSAMD as well? Aye, it's all the rest of them, all RSAMD, or theatre types. No, they're all really rich, you know, because that's how they can afford they don't get paid for their internship. But there's about 40 of them, and it's real endless. It's like last day at school. You know, they've all got their games in, and this is a fucking you wind up. I brought the Waynes as well. I brought the Waynes in to get him on the pitch. I mean, he's 38. He's got his own Waynes. He looks that wee because he's told. It's supposed to be a proud moment for me, you buggers. You know, they all let it wind up. Man, absolutely mental. And by the way, Funny Face, it's actually Audrey Hepburn. You know, do you think Barbara Streisand would be in a film called Funny Face? It's Funny Girl she was in. You know, she might highlight the fact that she's got a funny face. Audrey's one of the most beautiful women that's ever existed, so it's actually fun. So the joke's on you, but there's 40 folk here. I'm going to do just a wee kind of recap of the season. We're an hour in now, and I'm just starting it because I don't care about the fact that it's all over the place, and because it's last day of school, this is the last I'll be really giving to heavy duty Rangers until the rumours start coming in and all that, and probably after the World Cup, before we get into that troops. But but there's 40 of us. Doesn't matter. We've researched it. I will miss something. There'll be something that happened this season that I will miss out. So please let me know. You know, get in touch with your highs and lows of this season, or more to the point, any moments that I miss out as I just try to fire quickly through what happened this season, just to kind of round it up and wrap it up and give you just a complete season of pods in the way you were promised. But it doesn't matter how many folk look at it, there's always going to be something missed out. I've been listening to Rangers Review the last few days, and there's something like, no, you'd missed that. And these guys are freaking professional journalists, and they know far more than I'll ever know, and I'm still picking fault with them. It's easy to do, but please pick fault with me, because you guys make this pod. We're going to go over in the next hour. It's going to be a 2-hour pod probably. What went right, what went wrong, highlights, low points, and have a wee look at what our chairman and our kind of coming to the fore, coming into his own now, being put forward. The chief executive Jim Gillespie was saying on Sunday to the collective media, they acted fast, they acted quick, they just got it. I said this, I told you last Sunday after the game at Parkhead, they would definitely have to say something on the Monday. The Monday after that, I said it on Jersey as well, in the Friday night, and I'm on podcast in the Friday night previewing the game against Celtic at Parkhead. I was like, we're going to. If it doesn't win, that's it. The title's over. If it doesn't win this game at Parkhead, so there'll have to be an announcement one way or the other on the Monday. On the Monday, and it was only when it got to the Monday, like last Monday, that I realised. No, obviously, there's only 2 games left in the season, both dead rubbers. Why would they go to the trouble of sacking Danny Röhl on the Monday just to get a caretaker in for 2 games that don't mean anything? They're going to. There'll be an announcement somewhere or to back them before these 2 games. They're going to be professional, and they were in talking to the fans after the game, like just to say Mike Cavenagh did at St Mirren. I hate Andrew Cavenagh, what he represents, but I can't help liking the guy because I think we need a corporate wanker to take on the corporate scumbags that are at Parkhead. We've known that for years, and he seems to be doing that. He's conducting himself very well. He's saying the right thing, and I think when you notice that in times of defeat and setback, it means more than getting the big patter in times of victory. So they did. They came out, and as soon as the season was done, they gave it not even 24 hours, and they had the press in there at Ibrox on the Sunday, basically Sunday morning, and that's when the stories started hitting the pit, and it was good. It was good. But again, I don't want to. I'm going to do a bit of optimism amongst everything else, and I don't want you thinking, maybe leave that to the end. I'll leave that wee bit to the end, just to put. What have we got? Scottish Cup quarter-final fiasco. There's various things that I didn't mention in the preview for the Hibs game. The season's done, and I did a whole super cool first 11, my predicted 11, my preview pod for the Hibs game at Ibrox this time last week. It was just 11 complaints about the season, the 11 things that had gone wrong in the season. That's how cool and fantastic I am, a podcaster. But I actually missed out a lot of the lowlights. So quickly, what I'd said in the Hibs podcast, naming the season having actually been effectively over by that point. Still didn't know the whole Tav Fiasco was going to happen, but we'll discuss that. Quick reminder of my low points this season. You'll probably share these as well. No trophies, they make the headline. No trophies again. No trophies this season. Rangers, sans silverware. 2 seasons in the trot. We've got now 2 seasons with 0 trophies. 5 seasons with no league title. That's your main headline as a Rangers supporter. Also, no finals. Didn't reach a cup final. Either of the cup finals this season. And I've been saying, you get Hearts almost winning the league, St Mirren and Dunfermline getting to cup finals. They're all getting further than us in the tournaments. That's pretty bad. At least we're getting back to Hampden regularly, is what I've been saying from outside Hampden in my post-match reactions from all their defeats to Celtic at Hampden over the past 2,500 seasons. It feels like at least we're getting back to Hampden regularly. At least we're getting back. And we did last season. You're getting there for the League Cup final, losing the League Cup final, losing the Scottish Cup final the season before that. But you've basically been to every game at Hampden you can for like 3-4 competitions in a row. That's what Rangers need to be doing. That to me, that makes sense. And getting us back to where we're supposed to be, you need to get used to getting back to Hampden, because that wasn't happening even in 55 season. Didn't reach Hampden once. Didn't get to any semi-finals that season in the cup competition. So that was me saying we're getting back there. No, we got back there once. This season lost that League Cup semi-final to 78-year-old Martin O'Neill. So I'm seeing it as this season is 87-88 in terms of the Soonest revolution. It's the step back to absorb it, for the change to be taken on board, to give it. Like somebody who throws the javelin. You've got to get that. If you're going to break a world record with a javelin, you've got to get right back there. You've got to go back, seriously backwards before you fire yourself forward. And I'm hoping this is us going seriously backwards in an effort to fire ourselves forward. Other low light this season, we finished third in the league for the first time in 8 years. Third in the sense of falling outside the top 2 for the first time in 8 years. We finished third for the first time since pre-Gerrard. The first time since before Steven Gerrard came to the club. That was the last time that we finished third, as low as third. And we scored 5 away from home in the very last league game that season. But luckily Falkirk didn't come back to 5 each on Saturday there, the way that Hibs did on that horrible day at Easter Road. And we don't get a new gaffer in this time. I think it was already rumoured that Stephen Gerrard was coming to Rangers when we drew 5-each with Hibs at Easter Road back at the end of 2016-17 season, 2017-18 season. We didn't get out of our European group for the first time in 4 years, but that was a Champions League group, which was super hard. And at that point in Rangers history, a condensed Champions League group stage played over like 8 weeks as opposed to the usual 12 or 16 or whatever. That was too much for us to cope with. You play Napoli, Ajax, Liverpool, giants of European football. The clubs who really got it all together, Napoli that season on their way to winning Serie A for the first time since Maradona. It was excusable. I think it was excusable. But the notable thing is, it's the first time in 7 years that we haven't got out of a Europa League group stage. And that was, but we didn't do that in 2018-19. That was Stephen Gerrard. Just getting us into the Europa League group stage was amazing because he's got through 4 qualifying rounds. So it was a poorest season all round in Europe since, again, Stephen Gerrard's first season. We equalled our worst ever European defeat in Bruges. Third time we've lost by 6 goals in Europe. This is the poorest club that we've lost by. You know, Arsenal went and thumped Bruges 3-0 in Bruges. That was a horror show. That was horrific. Under Russell Martin, everything went wrong. It was a total humiliation. And out of the 3 times in Europe we have been beaten by 6 clear goals, one was to Real Madrid, one was to, in the Bernabeu, one was to Liverpool at Ibrox, a Liverpool team who were in between Champions League finals. This is by far the most humiliating. Club Brugge have been in 1 European Cup final in their entire history, and no European finals since the 70s. We didn't win any of our 3 Old Firm games at Ibrox, didn't lose any of them over 90 minutes, but they were all kind of pretty horrible in their own particular way. The first game, the 0-0, was actually a bit of a relief. The 0-0 with Celtic back, it was like August or September, the first Old Firm game of the season. We'd both been humiliated. That was straight after we'd lost 6-0 in Bruges. Celtic had put out by Kairat Almaty midweek over in Kazakhstan, so the two of us were just looking for a break, and there was like 3 shots on goal, none of which were anything other than trundles in the entire game. It was awful. The worst Old Firm game probably in the 21st century, but in terms of quality, but it was a relief at the time. The next one, the 2-each with Celtic at Ibrox, that was a pivotal moment. We're 2-0 up, blown them away in the first half. Second half, just let them right back into it and seemed to do nothing about it until Celtic had equalised. And then that just led to the following Sunday, the Scottish Cup. They played rope-a-dope with us. We dominated. We made the dominance less kind of explosive. We stretched it over the whole game, but it was less penetrative as well. We couldn't get that goal. Celtic beat us in penalties. We failed to win any 4 of the Old Firm games versus 89-year-old Martin O'Neill. Hampden, Ibrox, Parkhead, couldn't beat that bastard. I don't like Martin O'Neill. I said that there's been plenty of Celtic. You don't usually like Celtic fans as a rule if you're a Rangers supporter and vice versa. But Martin O'Neill I find a particularly risible. And I said before, I'd much rather Celtic had got in Pep Guardiola or something. He's available. Jose Mourinho. You know, they'd got in a much better and much younger manager who's going to guarantee them greater victories than Martin O'Neill and what he brings to Scottish football, the way he likes to push the political side of things. It's awful. I think we've all saw him in TalkSport this week or heard him, and it's pathetic. He was doing that after the Scottish Cup game at Ibrox as well. We've drawn 6 and lost 1 of our first 8 league games. That was pretty flipping miserable. Stevie Smith been in there as well. First 8 league games, we lost 1 and we drew 1. So we lost 1 and we won 1, but we drew 6 of them. We drew the first 4 games we played this season. It was the league season started on the 2nd of August, and we didn't win a game until the 28th of September. We didn't win a home game in the league until the 28th of October. That's ridiculous. And then we have had that 4-game run, losing 4 successive post-split games, or the only time that's ever happened to us. The only time we've failed to win at least 2 of our post-split games. The first time we'd lost 4 successive games since 1983. 1983-84 season it was, and it was John Gregg, Tommy McLean, caretaker manager, then Jock Wallace coming into the place. John Gregg. There was 3 different managers really over that run of 5 successive league games that we lost in 83-84. But we also beat St Johnstone 6-3 that season. It's a 6-3 kind of season thing. We went into this run on the back of beating Falkirk 6-3 at Falkirk. It's quite weird, the coincidences, but that's been pretty awful, these runs. We won one European group stage game. That was domestic ones I was talking about there. The European stuff, we're so used to performing admirably, very respectably in Europe over the last few years, certainly the 2020s, to win one European group stage game. We won one and we draw one, losing the other 6 of 8 European group stage games in Europa League this season. It was awful. We made an absolute public arse of replacing Russell Martin. The whole process, I've been through this before, but it has to be mentioned again. The whole process of it being so public and us seeming to simultaneously mess around and be messed around by Stephen Gerrard, and it all being at the press, like what hotel he was going to, and where we're interviewing him, and it's definitely happening. It's more or less it was a tacit criticism of the club when Stephen Gerrard is supposed to be a Rangers man after he's a Liverpool man, knocked us back, and then we go for him. I didn't want Stephen Gerrard to come back. I didn't want the next candidate to be, but Christ Almighty, I forgot. It's absolutely terrible. The brain is just gone. Maybe it's because I've been talking for an hour without actually getting to the point. But oh my God, the Australian international, the Australian that we played for us. Oh my God, he was managing in China. This is happening more and more. It's been a long, hard season, but I didn't want him. I wanted Danny Röhl, and we seem to have scared him off as well. He had to come back. We had to, I think, beg him to come back, Danny Röhl, and the Australian guy just wanted to stay in. That is absolutely ridiculous. Sorry, that's like no getting Barry Ferguson's name almost level of. It's these mental blocks you get when you've been talking for far too long, and it really have been this season. I know you're shouting at the screen. I can't stand it. I can't stand it when I'm watching a podcast and somebody isn't getting something really simple right. When it's a simple stuff, like how many times did Rangers win in the group stage this season? I'm like, that's ridiculous. I can do all that stuff, but this is, I know who the guy is, Kevin Muscat. It's not been able to get his name. It's not been able to get the nouns. It's been happening throughout the season. You spotted my Alzheimer's before I did. So Kevin Muscat, I didn't want him as a candidate, and then he told us he wanted to stay in China to complete the season there, and that was embarrassing. It was terrible, the whole process. Another total collapse after a warm weather training camp, But I was trying to make it, and I shared in that superstition, but I was trying to make it was superstitious. We were all a bit upset at the fact Rangers were going to go in a warm weather training camp when they had a weekend off, and I thought that makes sense. This is what Germans do. This is what commons. I hate that phrase. This is what intelligent football people do. They take the team away, have a camp. Everybody can be together. They can bond. It's been a stressful season. They can discuss tactics and they discuss various other stuff, and maybe a wee bit of a warm down and a wee bit of a warm up and reset, getting into this period where we look really shit hot. And that usually happens before Christmas or before the winter break. There's no winter break anymore in Scottish football, but we had to be, Rangers we'd win the Old Firm game at New Year, win about New Year, and then we go into the winter break as favourites to win the title, and then we just come back and it'd be a slow puncture. This was a total collapse after an Easter warm weather training camp. It was awful. There was that, so I dealt with all that. That was the kind of basics. We then had the Tav thing. That was, I mentioned all those in the preview for the Hibs game, which was the first game we played after the season had fallen to pieces, and I thought that was me absolutely covering everything. It was going to go wrong at Rangers, and then that very night the whole thing broke about Tav having ran away for Rangers in the huff because he didn't get picked. I was looking at it a bit like Johnny Sack. I've kind of looked. Don't want to be pure harsh, but Johnny Sack at his daughter's wedding in Sopranos when he finds he knew the guys were coming to take him back to jail. But he just bursts into tears in front of everybody. And the Soprano guys are like, lost a bit of respect from there as it seemed a bit harsh, but it is on a human level. Of course, the guy can't go to his daughter's wedding. He's in jail. He can't stay there for the whole night. He's got to leave his daughter's wedding early in handcuffs. And that it's humiliating. It's heartbreaking. It's a bit like Tav. He's not getting picked to lead the team out at Ibrox the last time, and it's But in terms of the job, in terms of the guys that are still working for the crews and what have you. It's bad. It's bad image. And that image means a lot when it comes to these things. And in terms of us, Rangers want to win stuff, want to go on with winning the trophies that Tav wasn't able to help us. Tav wasn't able to help us win. Tav did more than anybody else to get us towards winning them. It wasn't his fault in any way, shape or form. I've been defending that point for years. He's a legend as far as I'm concerned. But I was a bit standing there watching Johnny Sack at his daughter's wedding, greeting his eyes out, thinking, no, I think it was tone deaf. I think it was a bit tone deaf. People thought from Danny Röhl it was tone deaf. It was a bit kind of. It should have been given Tav. It's a game that doesn't mean anything. Tav's a fantastic servant. He just wants to start the game. And Danny Röhl's on the job. Danny Röhl's he's thinking about next season. He's maybe thinking about it too much. That's why he didn't concentrate and try to make this season end better. But I feel Tav was tone deaf to what had just been confirmed. This is the Wednesday. It was the Sunday, a game he played in badly. And he played in that game injured, because it was announced that he'd been injured in the Hearts game. But we've just lost the league. We've thrown away the league. This is at the end of a run of 3 straight defeats in critical games that could have kept our league title campaign alive. The third one maybe would technically have kept our league title campaign alive, but more pointedly would have stopped Celtic winning the league, if not us. And then 2 days later, 3 days later, it's all about Tav. And I think you think, like, these things are over emotional. I was very much understanding that people can make their own choices and you can get overwrought. And Tav's whole thing, a professional like Tav, somebody who wants to lead a club or is leading a club, you must get into the zone where you just want everything. You're always giving of your best because you believe you are the best. You deserve to be captain. You deserve to be first pick in the team sheet. He's denying he's getting old as well. We saw the little announcement he'd made a few weeks before after we'd won 6-3 at Falkirk, when everybody was feeling confident, he then makes the announcement. And I don't know if that's something to do with what happened in La Manga. The club saying maybe they're not willing to keep him on, and that's pissed him off. He's made that announcement unilaterally. I know he has, and the club have tried to tidy up behind him. And they're he's saying, I'm leaving the club, and then he's not leading. I feel as if that's upset us. That's upset us going into the most crucial games of the season in terms of winning the league, announcing that he's leaving. And then when he doesn't get what he wants to, I can see a reaction. He's got over emotional on the Wednesday night. But the next day to put out the Instagram post, he's had time to calm down then. He's had time to heard words with folk or whatever. Talk to the club, talk to the chairman, talk to the CEO, whoever, as well as Danny Röhl. He's went away and he's then put out that Instagram post, which has got a few token lines about no man's bigger than the club and all that. But it's all about my Waynes were doing this and my way. I don't really care about your Waynes at the best of fucking times. I know one of them's at Rangers, that's fine, but I don't care about any players' Waynes. I actually resent this stuff of me having to watch players bringing their Waynes out onto the pitch, unless it's one player who is leaving the club, as Tav was, but he's leaving a fucking trophy in his hand as well, and it's after that kind of length. I don't really care. The end of season stuff where players bring out their Waynes and all that at the best of times, even if we've actually won the league. I'm not here to see your Waynes. I'm here to see you, I'm paying your wages as well to help you, make sure your Waynes have got a great lifestyle without all this kind of pish. But I felt it was really poor by Tav. And Rami's getting shit sorted as if it is the German way. The World Cups, and we're going to be talking World Cups soon enough, and the Germans would have big fallouts behind the scenes, but that was so they could clear the air. Where the Dutch would have fallouts behind the scenes, and they would stay falling out, and that would ruin their whole World Cup campaign. And that's some way. Danny Röhl went in there and went in. He went in hard. I think Danny Röhl. I think it was like a gangland hit. If I'm going to be honest, it was violent, and it was necessarily messy. The way he spoke on the Wednesday night in his immediate post-match press conference, still in Ibrox, straight after the game, which we lost to Hibs, and Tav's that plays a part. He definitely played a part in us losing that game. I think there was a necessary level of ugly violence in what he was saying about, I'm here to cut out that kind of thing. And then what he did to Tav. Tav decided, tried to dictate that he was going to start the game and he wasn't going to be there. It was a kind of fuck you. It was sending a message. We're clearly at the deadwood. Cavenagh and Gillespie didn't interfere in the team selection that night to get Tav into the team. I think Röhl's response, after the post-match, between the post-match on Wednesday and the pre-match on Friday press conferences, had notably softened, perhaps at the behest of his superiors. But Cavenagh using the phrase on Sunday, and the post-season pressure that they held in Ibrox, talking about confirming the fact that Danny Röhl would be staying as head coach, expressing a lot of regret, really diplomatic stuff about Tav, the way he'd had to leave the club, how he never got his moment on the Wednesday night, but he just gave that line, Cavenagh. Was it Cavenagh or was it Gillespie? I don't know. But they said about when you're asked to pull on a Rangers jersey, you put on that jersey, and that's fucking spot on. That is absolutely spot on. There's no greater defender or lover of Tav than myself. But I think that let us know, after a seriously kind of diplomatic and seismic tribute to a diplomatic tribute to Tav, and a kind of seismic moment with him leaving the club, and the way it was done, I think it showed that the club's in the hands of serious people who have no time for any more antics. They're here to win, and you'd better be too, and they certainly know the fans are here to win. And I think it was one of the moments that was leaving a message to everybody else in the dressing room, outside the dressing room. Don't care how long you've been here. It's about the next competition. It's about the next season. It's about, if you've wrote off that season, that should be the first thing you should have to get pulled. It should be the players saying, "No, you get stripped, Tav. Get on there," because he's too ashamed to come out as captain because we've just chucked the league. You don't turn round and give it, "Oh, I want this and I want that," after yet again we've failed to win anything. They've totally chucked it for various reasons in the post-match. Scotland, of course, will be kicking off the World Cup in Boston, play a couple of games in Boston. And I was in Boston in 2002, which will be much changed since 2002. I was only for a few days, 2002. Most of the holiday was in New York, but we did Boston as well. And if you've been in Boston, of course, you're just the first. Cheers, isn't it? Cheers is what you think about being in Boston. Is it Faneuil, the famous square, Faneuil Square, Faneuil Town Hall, all that kind of stuff? Faneuil. It might be wrong, but there's two cheers, of course. There's a Cheers that's recreated. It's a perfect recreation of the actual, but it's probably not there anymore. I've not been, and Cheers hasn't been on the screens for a lot longer now, regularly, than when I was there back in the best part of quarter of a century ago. But they recreated the bar itself from the sitcom Cheers, the same layout and all that. But I think that's in maybe Faneuil Square. It's in the town centre anyway. And then there's the actual Cheers. The outside, the exterior shot that they use, the exterior shot, you imagine it's a bar, it's a basement bar, it's off a busy street in Boston, that it's been there for decades, and that's the whole kind of title sequence at the beginning of the film. There's that as well. There's a Cheers bar. You go along there, you can go down these steps, but inside the bar is totally different from what it is. And did the two of them had a pint in the two of them. And the one scene, one thing I always remember from Cheers, one of the many lines in that for Cheers is there's a corporate takeover, and Sam, the barman, Ted Danson, he's really worried about what's going to happen. There's a corporate takeover of Cheers. There's a different corporation are taking over the brewery or whatever. I don't really know how it works. And Norm, Big Norm, he goes up there and he's sitting at the end of the bar when he comes in. He said, "Norm, you're always working for different companies. What happens during a corporate takeover?" And he goes, "Oh, number one, first of all, they clear out all the dead wood." He says, right, and what's stage two? She says, "Oh, I don't know, I'm long gone by that point." It's really funny, and here we've got our American owners, and they seem to be doing exactly the same thing. The deadwood will be gone. Other things that went really wrong this season, other notable moments, the Scottish Cup quarter-final fiasco. Us being unable to win the game, despite dominating, was a sobering moment as well, watching 120 minutes of us struggling and slowly realising, I think it was probably 85 minutes in, 75 minutes in, I thought, oh aye, we're getting roped like dopes here. But after that, the characterising of our club and our fans, the whitewashing of Celtic's fans by various media types, as well as and really aggressively by Celtic, really sinisterly by Martin and Neil, we were just naturally celebrating, and then I turned around and these Rangers supporters coming at us with, they were burning babies and things like that from what I could see. I think Tav's performance, that was pretty horrible. But going back to Tav, I think that performance, that proved that it was time for Tav to go, absolutely. But I was saying how he's our Paul McStay and how he's our Fergus McCann. I think various Rangers supporters have said that. We won't appreciate him until further down the line. He just happens to be at the club at a time where they really need a lot of help, and he's just been the shining star, but he takes all the blame for how bad things are. But no, I'm now thinking he's our Bill Shankly. Talking about UEFA. The only European trophy that Liverpool won under Bill Shankly was the UEFA Cup in 1973 when they beat Borussia Mönchengladbach in the final. An English club beating a German club, and I'm saying this on a Wednesday. It all ties in. But Bill Shankly, infamously, an absolute legend. I mean, one of the greatest figures of all time. He never actually won the European Cup. I always make the mistake of thinking Bill Shankly's won the European Cup, a Scottish manager who's won the European Cup. But he didn't. But he laid the groundwork. That's what Tav's been in there doing. For Liverpool, Shankly left in a huff. He walked out on Liverpool in 1974, just after winning them the FA Cup for only the second time. They won the FA Cup in '65 under Shankly against Leeds, and that was a massive thing because the FA Cup was as big as the European Cup right up until the 90s, I think, in England. And it was a bit of a joke when I was growing up. Liverpool couldn't win the FA Cup in the 70s and the early 80s. They couldn't win the FA Cup, but they'd won. They won the European Cup like 4 times before they won the FA Cup again. So that was a big thing in England. Manchester United winning FA Cups was as big a news. That was a massive deal for the English as Liverpool winning European Cups. But Shankly laid the groundwork for Liverpool to retain league titles, win 3 league titles in a row, and a kind of 16 years of dominance that came between 74 and 1990, when the last time they won it before Jurgen Klopp arrived. It was Bob Paisley and then Joe Fagan. These are the guys that are not doing it. Kenny Dow stepping up as manager. But everybody, Shankly's the guy that got Liverpool out of the lower leagues. He took them up in the second division. So he got Liverpool up out won the second division as Liverpool manager, and then starts just grinding away and making it. But it was awkward when he left, when he walked out. He had nothing else to do. He went mental because he was just Liverpool through and through, psychotically obsessed with football and making Liverpool better. He started turning up at Elwood, the training facility back in the day, and eventually Bob Paisley had to ask him to leave because he kept coming up and just correcting the first. Oh, here's Bill Shankly, that's legend. Come on, Gaffer, come on back in and just watch the you're not employed by the club anymore. And that you walked out on us, but who's going to say Judy to Bill? Well, he just started telling him where they were going wrong. He started telling Bob Paisley that where he's going wrong, what he's going to do, and it got really awkward. And eventually, I had to ask him to leave. Shankly's still an absolute legend. He did lay the groundwork. There's no two ways about it, And I think it's the same thing. We're going to win trophies. We're going to win league titles and that from now on. And Tav absolutely laid that groundwork. But it got awkward at the end there, as sometimes it has to do. Sometimes you have to a violent change to finally detach ourselves from the non-winning years under Tav and show that we're a different beast now. The takeover in June, that was a massive thing. It's the biggest thing that's happened to the club since 2012, as far as I'm concerned, and I think it just reflects the praise that's due to the previous board, who always stuck by. I thought they were doing a great job. I could see what they were trying to do, and that's why I couldn't get excited. And I get excited in a real way in June when the takeover happened. I get excited in a real way from the moment it was posited because I knew this is what we needed. I've always said 2012, it's going to be a generation. That's such a massive hit to us, whether the club died or not. And of course we didn't, but it was still such a debilitating. It was like a stroke or a heart attack or something. Taking years to build back up from that. And I thought it'd be a generation. It was going to be 2032 when on our own steam. It'd be 2032 before we were winning league titles and retaining them again and winning multiple trophies during the season, unless there was serious investment from a third party before then, and that happened. That certainly was that investment, and it was as good as you're going to get. It was as good as you're going to get. It wasn't your petrodollar theocracy money coming from. It's getting close to it now, the way Trump's running things in the States, but the States as a country I love, the USA, so I was really happy that they were getting the investment that way. That was only 2 ways that the level of investment we required to get back to winning ways before the 2030s was ever going to happen, and it has happened. But at the same time, I knew too many of the people that were telling me to get on. Oh, come on, why are you not jumping about and cheering about this? I'm like, just because they're going to get slagged rotten, because it's not going to work straight away. There's too much change required. A major shift has still got to happen. and it's going to be brutal, and it's not going to work straight away, and folk are going to get upset about it, and within fucking 2 minutes, straight away they're fancying Russell Martin as head coach. I did not want Russell Martin as head coach. That's the one good thing about doing pods. It's all there. So the recordings that you can go back and check them. I did not want Russell Martin as head coach. I wanted David Ancelotti, anybody else basically rather than Russell Martin. But once he took over, let's see what we're trying to do. And I found ways in which it could be right. Maybe I'm doing the same thing with Danny Röhl just now. But I found ways in which it could be the right thing for us, and maybe what Jens Bertu Askew, his friend, his former teammate, and also his his friend in their coaching beliefs, maybe what he's eventually done at Motherwell, proves that there was a plan there that could have come to fruition if we'd had the patience, but we really didn't, and it wasn't working in a spectacular way, and it was awful. It was absolutely awful. The anti-Russell Martin protest, the stuff online, a vegan cunt is a vegan cunt. It was horrible. It's shown up an aspect of our support, or some of our supporters, that I absolutely despised. It's just totally, being so vicious about the fact he's vegan was fucking disgusting. And then he's taking them on a walk around Loch Lomond. What do you want to go down the boozer? Go to the steps and they'll get wrecked. You can't do that anymore. A team that drinks together, wins together is the most beautiful line of my entire life supporting Rangers. I love that era. I love those players. I adore that manager. But it doesn't work. And Walter Smith would be the first guy to tell you that. It doesn't work anymore. Everybody's fit as anything. So a get together. They went up a mountain or something, up a hill. That's what you're supposed to do. Get away from it all, go. But that was a slagging. That was the most ridiculous thing. It was a lot of real backwardness reflected, I think, in a lot of the attitudes to Russell Martin and the anti-Russell Martin protests at the Hibs game. It was his politics. He'd kind of progressive politics. I think he'd voted Green and all that, and that made him despised. The Green Party down there isn't the same as the Green Party up here, but and then he wouldn't wear the shirt and tie, he wouldn't wear the brogues, and I don't really care about that. To be honest, I like it. I do like it, but it's a nice thing. It's a bonus. It's non-essential for me. It really isn't. But there you go. There's others. Rangers stopped wearing the red and black socks, for example. I would be outraged, So I'm not going to get too cocky about that kind of stuff. But it was getting really messy, really silly. And the night the Hibs game in the League Cup, the Saturday evening game, Hibs in the League Cup, and everybody's singing Nico Raskin's name. And I think Nico Raskin's displays across the season, yet again, have showed that he's not somebody to be trusted. He's still too immature in terms of how he delivers his performances. He's much needed, and he doesn't step up nearly as often as he should. But like Barry Ferguson, totally undermining Paul Le Guen back in the day, we backed the wrong horse, but it got the short-term hit that we needed. The throwing the stuff onto the park to get the game held up against Hibs. I think it's just for us to be slagging Celtic fans for pitch invading and all that. It's the self-centred generation, this thing that's going on just now. There's protests at every club, every major club, about bullshit, about the fact they haven't won enough recently. And there's only a certain amount of trophies in football. It just pissed me off. It was horrible. But the posters outside and folk, I think there's so much horrible stuff going on in politics these days. There's scumbags trying to take over the country. They're taking over the world, and nobody's really doing a lot about it. But Rangers have got a manager who's trying to make us play an expansive type or a dominant type of football, when that's what we've been complaining about for years, that we don't dominate the smaller clubs. I hate him because he's actually a vegan. That's the real reason I hate him. It's the results were terrible, and the humiliation in Bruges is that's a second offence. But I just need to wait and see. And by the time we got to the Falkirk game, by half time in that game, which we were winning at half time in that game at Falkirk, it was like, it's not going to get any better. It is absolutely not going to get any better. So get him gone, and away he went. And then the whole process of replacing him, as I say, was terrible. I remember the game at Livingston, I was watching it on the telly, it was Russell Martin's only league win, and he only had 2 wins against top flight Scottish teams. One was Hibs in the League Cup that got us into the semi-final, and he's unbeaten in domestic cup competitions. But the home loss to Hearts was bad, but there was also Shankland handling the ball and stuff like that in the game itself, dodgy penalty. But he only had 1 loss, but he only had 1 win. It was all draws mostly under Russell Martin in the league, and that win at Livingston was one of the most surreal moments a totally memorable moment for all the wrong reasons in my life as a Rangers supporter, because we've scored a last-second winner. We scored a brilliant goal through Tav in the first half, dominating. Couldn't get the second goal. They equalise Livingston in the game. We just can't. We don't look like we're going to get that winning goal, and then we get it with literally the last kick of the ball. Max Aarons slams it into the net. We score the winner, and there's screams of delight with a last-second winner for Rangers. But there's also, and you can hear it across the telly, instantly the Rangers support 3 sides of the stadium to start singing "Martin, Martin, get to fuck," while on the touchline, Russell Martin and his backroom staff are going nuts as if they've just won the Champions League final, rather than just taking it. Oh, that's we got away with it. You know, they didn't get it. They didn't understand what was going on here, and I think maybe Russell Martin then felt, right, that's it. We've got the first win. I'm going to build on this. The plan is working. It's taking a long time because I'm having to clear out players I don't like. You know, we did his combustion in the first day at Falkirk Park, which I thought was a kind of plastic explosion of plastic anger. After the game, he was obviously wanting to get rid of the losing attitude. The guys that are creating stuff in the dressing room, and I don't know how the way Tav's ended the season, and then Nico Raskin, is it a hammy strain or something like that? Is the gaffer just had? Danny Röhl said that Nico Raskin was his man on the pitch. He was his guy that implemented his tactical plan. So maybe I'm getting putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5 with that one. But I think Russell Martin was trying to do a lot of things a lot of Rangers fans wanted done with our squad, with our dressing room. But we disliked Russell Martin more. And the way he went, he wasn't good. I mean, the 6-0 in Bruges and the way he failed to react to what was happening on the pitch to inflict an absolute humiliation on us. To watch Rangers 6-0 down, and to the point where I thought we're all convinced we're going to lose 10 goals in that game. And the referee blew after like 1 second of injury time. We're all complaining about the injury time not being fully allocated on Saturday in Celtic's game against Hearts. I've never been so glad to see 0 injury time given. It's an actual scandal. The Champions League referee is giving it. No, that'll do them. That'll do them. The tie's over. They beat 9-1 in aggregate. That'll do. He's blew that whistle. Jack Butland always gets some goodwill from me now after helping keep it down to 6. That was awful, and we just had to check that it wasn't that necessary breaking of all the eggs to make a massive omelette. No, he was just a shit manager who didn't get it at all, Russell Martin. What else have we got in terms of Olympiacos not winning the Greek title? Remember we're scared about Olympiacos. We need Olympiacos not to win the Greek title because he would take our Champions League place. If we win the league, we go straight into group stages. If Olympiacos don't, Shankland Bigotry, and they did. Palace beat them home and away in the semi-finals. That's good. Of the Conference League, and I think by the second leg we weren't really bothered what happened with Shankland Bigotry. And then the Olympiacos didn't win the Greek title either. It was all there. It was all there for the taking. If we'd won that league, we'd have went straight into the Champions League group stage. But we just ain't ready. There was Youssef Chermiti. He was a big story this season. Cost us so much money. With Thelwell and Stewart then getting sacked after the process to bring in, which resulted in bringing in Danny Röhl. It was a process to bring in a replacement. All through October, a replacement for Russell Martin when he was sacked after that game at the start of October with Rangers in 8th place at Falkirk. And it was a public nightmare. It was a public embarrassment. The whole process, and shortly after that, once we got Danny Röhl in and he was asked to do his kind of traffic light system of judging all the players in the squad, most of them brought in by Thelwell and Russell Martin via Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell were gone after Kevin Thelwell had brought in his son. Is to make a public announcement or a public explanation of why his son was working for us. It's been an absolute nightmare behind the scenes. We got in Jim Gillespie to replace it eventually, and he took forever. He's just coming to the fore now after the season's finished to replace Patrick Stewart. But hopefully we've got the man for the job, and hopefully we've got the gaffer for the job as well. But Youssef Chermiti, a lot of money. I said at the time, he played the game against Sturm Graz where we lost away from home in the Europa League, that awful Europa League campaign. He's doing all the right things. He just the last thing he's in the right place. He's making the right runs. He knows what he should be doing. He's just not got the sharpness yet or the confidence to get his finishing going. By the end of the season, he's banging in 15 goals in the league, scoring a couple of hat tricks. He's getting there, very promising, and now it's starting to happen. That Europa League campaign, the cold, empty feel of the whole Europa League campaign. I keep picturing Genk at home, the game against Genk at Ibrox. It was the first game of the campaign, and it was far from sold out, and you're comparing it to the past years, what we usually don't get to the Europa League quarter-final the previous season, getting to the final a couple of seasons before that. It was to then, it was just dead from the word go. It was moribund, and the fans did everything they possibly could. The Union Bears put on some amazing tifos, none better than the game against Roma. I did us really proud of Union Bears that night, a beautiful tifo. I finally got to see Roma, but despite the Union Bears' best effort, it was the first time I'd seen Roma in the flesh. But what should have been a great night at Ibrox, what should have been a historic moment. It just, even when Danny Röhl came in, he just let Europe go. He just basically binned Europe to concentrate on domestic stuff. There was nothing he could do about it. It was a kind of just trying to alleviate the humiliations in Europe. And we did well to only lose 2-0 to that Roma side that night, and Danny Röhl got to see the physicality problem that we've got as well. But I finally got to see Roma, but I think Roma have yet to see Rangers at Ibrox, really. They've yet to properly experience Rangers at Ibrox, have the old Giallo Rossi. So that was a beautiful moment to see Roma, but it was just shrouded in this disappointment, this awful even when we drew with Braga, everything we've done with Braga in the past 2 times we've played them in Europe, I mean, a poor comparison for us finally stopping our losing streak in the Europa League. And then eventually we beat the Bulgarians, Ludogorets Razgrad, and it's the worst Ludogorets Razgrad team in 15 years because they didn't win the Bulgarian title this season for the first time in 15 years, unlike Levski Sofia, who won the title this season. All those years ago, we beat them by the odd goal at Ibrox on the night, and that was the only win we got. And it was cold, and it was windy, and it was damp, and there was massive spaces in the crowd, and it was too late for us to really have any chance of qualifying. It was just about damage limitation from the word go, that Europa League campaign. It was awful. Wasn't any high points of the season? Any good points in the season? Yeah, well, we beat Hearts 4-2 in February. That was absolutely magnificent. That was probably the best performance I saw all season. I think that's got joint equal with the 3-1 win at Parkhead. It was Wilfred Nancy's Celtic, so nobody wants that to count anymore. But we did go to Parkhead and beat them. We took as many points off Celtic as they did off us in the league this season. 1-0 down at half time. Blew them away that second half. Chermiti getting a couple of goals, announcing himself the same way we did the hat-trick he got against Hearts later on. That was February, just after Valentine's Day. We beat Hearts 4-2 at Ibrox after beating Celtic 3-1 at Parkhead. And at the end of January, we had a 3-0 home win over Dundee on the Sunday, but we scored 2 goals in injury time. Danilo getting his last goal for the club and his last appearance for the club to send us on. And that was a day that Celtic and Hearts were drawn at Tynecastle. So we'd get 3 points. They'd both dropped 2 points, and it felt there was a real vibe that day, a real sense of belief. That was a great night as well. Beating Aberdeen in all 3 clashes with them this season. Beating them home and away, that was really nice, and beating them 4-1, thrashing them the second time we played them at Ibrox, but beating them in successive games midweek and on the Sunday home and away, that was nice. The Panathinaikos, both games against Panathinaikos were great in terms of the result. 3 cracking goals we scored against them. Beat them 2-0 at Ibrox, drawn 1 each away in a game in which Russell Martin was told you have to hit the ground running, Russell. The pressure was getting put on him. That was fine. He did that. He did that, and that was good. But the actual game itself, the way the games went, with Finlay Curtis scoring against Panathinaikos at Ibrox and JD Gasma cracking goals, and Gasma scores against them away from home. But the chances that Panathinaikos missed, the way they dominated us, the open football we were playing, it was suicidal stuff. We weren't convinced, despite it being a great win. Polzenia at home was certainly the greatest moment for Russell Martin, beating them 3-0 at home. Lost 2-0 away from home, and they pounded us. And this is the third qualifying round of the Champions League. The next round, the 3-0 win over Polzenia at Ibrox was fantastic. That's the night, the only night probably you fully believed Russell Martin was the man. He could do something. We looked phenomenal that night. It never happened again. We had those little runs under Danny Röhl. It was the 8 wins in the trot, kind of November, December, January. That was great. And then the 4 wins in the trot going into in the league, going into the post-split right up to the end of the pre-split phase. They had really good runs, but we'd beaten Kilmarnock 5-1 at home after getting booed off at half-time because we were only 1-0 up against 10 men. We come out in the second half. That was where Tour Romans announced himself. He come on, and we just saw how classy he was straight away, replacing Jaden Magoma. Skov Olsen looked promising enough as well in that game. He scored. Antman scored. That was a great night. That was really good night, beating Kilmarnock 5-1 at home. We kind of think we battered Kilmarnock 3-0 at Rugby Park on a Saturday night. We battered Dundee at Dens 3-0 on a Sunday. These were lovely. These were just nice, straightforward, the kind of games that Rangers would struggle in before. Nice, straightforward wins against them. Nice goals. That was good. It was just quietly optimistic. The 6-3 game at Falkirk, of course, our last pre-split game, the last time we won until Saturday just passed at Falkirk. The last time we won a game, the hope after that game, the hope was absolutely phenomenal. We're just buzzing, and the way I've gone 2-0 down, the way we're scoring the goals, the 5 goals we scored in the second half, Nico Raskin, utterly world class. It felt that everything was just going right. Everything was going our way. What happened in La Manga? What happened in La Manga? It's going to be the subject of my first stage play. I'll just try. Was it a love triangle or something that was going on behind the scenes? What happened in La Manga after that game against Falkirk? We beat them 6-3. We thought we were going to win the league. We went into that league. The post-split, 1 point off the top. Come on. Maybe a Real Housewives of La Manga with Andy Cohen as the host. We can find out what went down there. It's a mystery. It's going to become my first stage play. We know agents were there. We know there was discussions going on with Danny Röhl and the board about the way ahead. Were they telling players that they weren't going to be wanted next season? I think it might have been one of the other seminal moments of the season. Pivotal. The next game we played was that getting beat 3-2 at home by Motherwell, which I think is the worst of all the defeats post-split. The most telling. Where we went with the 4-2-2-2, which was unworkable without Romans and Nadiri. But we went ahead and we did it without Romans and Nadiri against the one team in the league that's most likely to pick us off by us giving them any kind of space at all, by us going totally narrow, and that's exactly what happened. I don't know if, having played that game against Falkirk where we just battered in 5 goals in the second half, wind assisted, we felt as if we could do that. Danny Röhl was trying to tell the players how they could do that without Nadiri, and we tried to do it in Magoma and Majovski, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't do what was required, and Motherwell took us to pieces, got back into the game, but lost it at the end up, and that was that. That was the moment. Just like it wasn't happening at all, and I would love to know what was. Maybe it was just the Russell Martin undertow. Danny Röhl certainly has been dropping the hint, and it seems to be apparent in the way we played these games. That taking the lead against Celtic, taking the lead against Hearts at Tynecastle, taking the lead against Celtic at Parkhead, in the games after the Motherwell game, in the post-split era, post-split period. There's no fight. There was no ability to change when your opponents changed. There's this rumour going around that Danny Röhl at Tynecastle was seen screaming at Andrew Cavenagh, "You need to get me leaders, you need to get me leaders, I need leaders." And that's very believable because it seems to be what we do need, and everything that's been said since by Cavenagh and Jim Gillespie seems to back that up. Danny Röhl's record when he came in, 40 games he had in charge, 30 in the league. He drew 6, lost 5, and he won 19 of them. But he'd only lost 1 up until after the split. He'd 4 games in the Cups, and he won the 2 against the Minnows, and he lost the other 2 against Celtic. He'd 6 games in Europe, and he's won 1, drawn 1, and lost 4. In the league, when he first came in, his form with Rangers in the league was boring. Just on arrival, he stabilised us. And then after Christmas, it became really exciting. He got his 4 new signings in. Scott Volson on loan, Nadiri, 2 Romans, and Nadiri, 2, and Chukwani from Sturm Graz. All seemed to be great at that point in time. That certainly livened us up. In the kind of post-Christmas period, we started to really crank it up. But we had a lot of 2 each draws as well, which some were good, some were bad. It got a bit more exciting, but a bit less controlled. And then after the split, we were appalling. We totally collapsed. It was a total collapse after the split. Europe, I just don't think he was interested. I think he wrote it off. I certainly hope so. Hope it's deliberate, because we're terrible in Europe under Röhl and under Russell Martin. I think it's the with the joint best goal difference in the league. I think us and Hearts are the best goal difference in the league. We scored more goals than anybody else. I think we scored like 3 goals more than Celtic over the course of the season. But I said we're 1 point off the top going into the split, and we're 10 off the top by the end of it. That's a staggering collapse. I think Danny Röhl maybe is trying to push us. I think he's been trying to just kind of put a sticking plaster on everything that Russell Martin had done, and we were really, really boring, but we piled forward, we just kind of dragged ourselves back into the top flight. This thing about how Hearts only were allowed to look like they could win the league up until the last 5 minutes of the league. They were allowed to look like they could win it because Rangers and Celtic were so bad. And that's true, Rangers and Celtic have definitely gone backwards, but Hearts have made us go backwards. I mean, Hearts took, 12 points off us, right? But they also took, 6? They took 8 points off Celtic, and Celtic are 10 points worse off than they were last season. So Hearts have taken 8 of those points off them, if you like. It was Hearts definitely did the business this season. They're a very real threat. Maybe not next season. They've got Europe to cope with as well. But as I say, he was at Union St Gilloise. Tony Bloom, his involvement. Union St Gilloise hadn't won the league for 90 years when they eventually won it with Tony Bloom's influence in Belgium. And the year before that, they'd finished second in the league by a point. And the year before that, they finished third in the league by a point. I think the team lost it in goal difference. So they're going to come back. It's not a short-term thing from Hearts. This isn't 1986 where we never hear from them again. Need to watch out for them next season. But it's been really Danny Röhl's post-Falkirk presser on Saturday there. Ronnie Esplin, my mate Ronnie, he asked him if Falkirk, what about the Falkirk game and what about the season as a whole? And he'd said about the Falkirk game itself, the 5-2 game there, if you play with no individual mistakes, then there'll be no goals conceded. As if we've made mistakes, that's why we conceded. That's how it works, Danny. That's the problem. We are making individual mistakes. The number we're making is letting us concede a lot of goals. That was the problem. And in terms of the season itself, it's a roller coaster, an emotional roller coaster. 4 weeks ago, after I win at Falkirk, he was convinced we could win the league, but there's been too many defeats. Nothing but defeats. Danny, we're competitive, but we're not good enough in the key moments. We can't wait to arrive. He can't wait to arrive in the new season with lots of energy. And Ronnie was asking him if it was a bigger job than he thought it was, this job. And he says, well, the bigger job than he'd realised. And he's saying Rangers is a big job. It's a demanding job, and it's the reason why I like to be here. He likes the pressure. That's fine. He demands a lot of his players and himself. And after these 40 games that he's been in charge since he arrived, 40 games as our boss, he's going to be a better manager. So he's on a learning curve as well, he's saying. And the pressure thing, that he likes the pressure, well, his team doesn't, so that maybe makes that scans with what was said by Röhl and a few other pressers when he's talking about the players not being able to adapt, not being able to take and also what was said by Cavenagh in terms of the kind of player he wants to get in the profiles. He praised Youssef Chermiti. He wants him here next season. That's big Youssef getting a hat-trick the other day, despite the rumoured interest from Porto. You can see how good he is after settling in at the club, so that's Danny taking the praise for turning Youssef Chermiti around. We need the core. This is in response to how important it was to keep key players at the club next summer. I don't know who the core is. Tour Romans is really good. Big Fernandez is good. Chermiti's great. But Nico Raskin, is he reliable enough? That's the best players. Difficult to know that there is a core, but we also need flesh. We also need fresh blood. Flesh and blood, I was going to say. There are 3 parties involved in the question of whether or not Mikey Moore stays at the club or comes back to the club next season. He's got a good relationship with Romans on the pitch, Mikey Moore. So that gives a strong left-hand side. So we are the one party, Danny Röhl is saying, who's made it clear what position we're going to take regarding Mikey Moore. We want him back at the club next season. That's been stated to Spurs, so that's fine. Against that, you have to balance the fact that it could be the end of the window before we know if we're going to get Mikey Moore in, so Rangers need to start the season on the front foot, says Danny Röhl, kind of raising his eyebrows at the notion we'd have to get somebody else in. I don't know what that means for Gassama then. I don't know what that means. I thought Gassama was really good on the left-hand side when he got to play there, but maybe we're going to be selling gas. Big Raman from STV then came in at the end and asked him, basically, what are you going to do different because Hunters of Bears totally hate you just now? He says, consistency. It's all about consistency and wins from the first day of the season onwards. There's got to be more clean sheets. We're the best scorers in the league this season. We need more clean sheets. He's a little tired, but after 4 weeks off, he's going to come back raring to go, and he learned a lot about his players this season as well. We then had Andrew Cavenagh and Parag Marathi. Sorry, I don't know if Parag Marathi was there. I think it's Andrew Cavenagh and Jim Gillespie made their announcement on Sunday. Had the press in on Sunday to confirm Danny Röhl's situation, the entire club situation, and it's I can never remember the name of that part. I can't get the name of Kevin Muscat, but I can never remember the name. Is it Restore? The other party, the other nutcase right wing party that totally uses Union Jack in a kind of Nazi sort of way. Is that they're even nastier than Reform? But I think, what is it with these? Is it because it's like reactionary? Reactionary has got the RE beginning. They all feel they have to be. Is it just not revenge? And it's weird. They're a political party in the same way. I think it's Restore. They're not as big, obviously. They're not as well known. Chris Mason, as they try to get them into power the same way as with Nigel Farage and Reform, but they're a political party in the same way. Like GB News is a news channel. The one that's proud to be worse than Reform. I know it's another RE. I know, is it Respite? The emphasis is on spite. Remaining. No, that's me. I'm a Remainer. Revenge, reactionary, revolt, revulsion, restitution, repatriate, retrograde. Rebuild is not the word I'd use, said Andrew Cavenagh. That's the continuity. The continuity. That's just start. He wants continuity. He wants consistency. So if he starts calling it a rebuild, that's that ruined straight away. The first step in the rebuild, the first step of getting consistency, is to not use the word rebuild. Anyway, it's not about how the kind of parties, they all need the re-prefix to prove they're going back to a glorious time that didn't actually exist and only seemed glorious because you were younger then and everything's better when you're kind of feeling healthier and not required to think about even a time before you were born, so you can be willfully stupid about it and be reactionary. I think it's reform, restore, reactionary. Well, I'm no immune to the kind of Nazi mindset myself, that fascist groove thing, because all I want for Rangers is all us old kind of one-note codgers have been banging on about for years and years. Rebuild in the image of a time that did exist and was better. A time when Rangers won the league at least on average once every second year with massive helpings of unpasteurised cups sprinkled on top as we all kind of sat inside smoking in the faces of the only black folk we'd ever seen in our lives, the ones who were pushing Rangers towards 9-0 and helicopters Sunday, and Marvin Andrews and Mark Walters and that, while we were drinking the only kind of alcohol that you were allowed back then, which was lager or heavy. And even used to get light, there's a thing called light, and the nearest we got to a kind of imported beer was Guinness. That's when things were better. Things were simple. Didn't know what a paedophile was, so didn't it really matter what your uncle's hand was going as you sat next to him in that boozer, smoking. The main thing was there wasn't such thing as paedophile, so it didn't really matter. Autism as well. Nobody ever heard of that. So folk were just loonies, and you just get rid of them. You just dumped them in a sanatorium or something like that. You just laughed at them. You didn't actually do anything to help them. This is what we reimagine, renaissance, reinvigorate, recharge. Just for fuck's sake, Rangers, don't repeat what we did last season. Refurbish Ibrox. Project Regen. They slipped it in there, didn't they? They slipped it in there, Cavenagh and Gillespie, with the Project Regen, the rebuilding of Ibrox, the work they're going to do at Ibrox is at the feasibility stage. They've talked about it. Now it's the feasibility stage. How realistic is it? And the only thing that was mentioned, I want it up to a 72,000 capacity. Knock down the other the three sides, the three newest side, the goalpost stands, knock them all down. And even dig out the inside of the main stand if you want to. Just keep the Archibald Leitch crisscross lattice work balcony, and obviously the frontage of the building is listed. So that's got to be kept anyway. But just get up to 72,000. It's a beautiful number. It's an appropriate number. Take down the price of the tickets, but all that got mentioned was maybe taking your ticket, your seat and giving it over to hospitality to charge more for it. So that's probably the time I'll end up falling out with them. But this was reinvigorate, recharge. The most important thing that happened last season was losing to Queen's Park in the Scottish Cup. That's what effectively started the sacking of Philip Clement, wasn't it? We beat Queen's Park at the same stage, same stadium, same weekend in the Scottish Cup this season. We beat them 8-0. So I don't see why we should be getting rid of Danny Röhl at all. I think Cavenagh Manat, they said they're out in the pitch side at Falkirk. Cavenagh did this at St Mirren as well earlier in the season. They know what the fans want. They're talking to the fans. They're fronting up. But the kind of Pravda-like Rangers TV interview, Andrew Cavenagh said, what did he say? I've got this written down here. I've got the quotes written down. We didn't succeed. Success is winning the title. The responsibility is with himself and Parag. There's no other way to cut it. We did not succeed. Danny is our coach for next season. Anyway, the thing he needs, Danny Röhl, is number one, a pre-season, and number two, a revamped squad. Revamped? Will Danny be backed in the summer? There was the boy for Rangers TV asks him, will Danny be backed in the summer? I don't like the word backed. Snapped back Andrew Cavenagh. I don't like the word backed. Well, fucking the boy with the cats. Well, you own this microphone. You pay my wages. You own this stadium. I'll ask you whatever you want. It was you that told me to say, but just so I could say, snap back at you, that I don't like the word backed. We recognise that the squad needs significant change. It's less around the talent. We've got good players. It's more around the mentality and the leadership, and that's what we're focusing on. I think it's a dig at Tav as well. We are optimistic about the new season. We have made progress, but words are cheap. He doesn't want to be all smiles the day after the failed league attempt, the failed season has just ended, but he is optimistic. He gets it from a PR angle. I think Andrew Cavenagh is being harder on himself and the board publicly than I would be on him and the board. But first season in charge, the changes needed everywhere are colossal. They need a settling in period, but yeah, they've had that now, and I think he's aware of that. The club is into every bone in his body. He's been here a lot more than they realise, but I think he's trying to tell he's an addict as well. Rangers addict. Does he have a message to the fans? Not nearly good enough, and we know it needs to be better. Secondly, we'll do it together. I think we've all recognised that when we're fighting side by side, that we're more likely to have success. There was then, of course, with Jim Gillespie, I think it came out on the Tuesday, what he'd been saying in that presser, talking about meeting the SFA on Friday to find out how we improve the Scottish game. This was really aggressive in a diplomatic sort of way. The SFA, Scotland are going to the World Cup finals. We all know that. This was the day, this came out the day that Steve Clarke was announcing his squad, so they're going to make money. The SFA are going to make money. We can help, you can spend that money on improving VAR. Improving referees. We need full-time referees. There's no two ways about it. So I think mentioning that as a kind of form of aggression there, very diplomatic. Celtic's cheating is almost being named, and it's been nice to see at least the rest of the country, not the UK, Gary Lineker, and then Jim White's just a sensationalist tabloid get now. But I'm having a go. He's the best person possible to talk to Martin O'Neill on the Monday or the Tuesday when O'Neill's just, it's on Sky Sports that they put a clock up in the corner of the screen. There is 31 seconds of injury time still left to be played when Celtic scored that third goal. Chris Sutton is then shouting, the game it's going to have to be restarted. They're going to have to get these players off the pitch. The game's not finished yet. Get these fans off the pitch. The game's not finished yet. There's plenty of Celtic fans. The majority of Celtic fans are in the stands. They're pissed off as anybody else. Fans going on the pitch and invading the pitch. They just want to see their own players. They want it done fair and square, I'd imagine. But you hear Martin O'Neill go, there was only 8 seconds, and they blew during, everybody was on the pitch. That was full time, and that's, as somebody said on Twitter the other day, who I retweeted despite the fact I'm being I think they're a respite voter. They retweeted, well, if that was the case, then Motherwell should just have blown for full time and Celtic wouldn't have got that penalty the other night. When it got to the end of the allocated, just 30 seconds before the end of the allocated injury time, just blow then. That's fine. The game's by me anyway. Don't bother having that throw in. Don't bother. And then Celtic don't get that penalty and they don't win the league. It was it's pretty pathetic stuff, so it's nice to know that we're going to be on the front foot, but diplomatically in a Rangers style when it comes to having a go back at Celtic and standing up for ourselves. As Scotland, we like to think of ourselves as Scotland's leading club. As Scotland's leading club, we just want to help. That was the only thing. That was what he was saying, Jim Gillespie. The squad's been upgraded. Does that mean there's no sales rather than big buys? We're not going to be selling as many players. I thought Chermiti and Fernandez and Nico Raskin will be out the door to get in the players that Danny Röhl needs. I thought we need like 12 new signings. Maybe that's what we're going to do. And Cavenagh just doesn't want to advertise the fact that we're looking to completely rebuild the squad, because you're just going to get the prices put up by the teams you're trying to buy from. But we'll see. There's no talk of revolution or rebuild. It's an exercise in semantics, I think, because as per 55, consistency is everything. It can't be achieved overnight, consistency. This is the problem. This is why Danny Röhl's rhetoric around the Tav thing was probably dialed back between pressers. Tav was just giving it, you can get to fuck, basically. And Danny Röhl was giving it, you can just get to fuck. We need to cut out this kind of weakness, basically. Players being so concerned about their place in the team rather than being a part of a squad that's trying to win stuff and they don't care about anything else. He says this after the game against Hibs, when he's getting the initial reaction to Tav having walked out. But I think that would maybe be, there's a revolution, there's a change in attitude that's too kind of incendiary. It's what's going on, but it's going to be kept in-house because consistency, as Steven Gerrard proved, as Mikel Arteta has proved at Arsenal, is what's needed. So revolution is violent, and that's not what we want to convey outwardly. But in the dressing room, it's total, I've just shot Tav and anybody else got a problem. So that's quite good. So what's my wish list? There was another. Sorry, Big Rahman. He wasn't having that. Big Rahman Bargwas from STV. He got Cavenagh out, pulled him outside the press room. Let's have it outside into the main stand, and they're sitting there on STV, all kind of chillaxed in the main stand. And he's going, what's going on there, Cavenagh? Let's have the rundown, let's have the proper lowdown. And Andrew Cavenagh said, we know that supporters have gone from singing Danny Röhl's name to a month ago to a different view today, and that's natural. But our job at the club, I think it's Gillespie, Cavenagh, the executive board, is to be the even keel. We believe that continuity and having Danny build from here will be the thing that most likely to bring us success. We don't think a change increases our odds, a change in manager. How big a rebuild? Asked Rahman. How big is it? Rebuild is not the word I'd use. Again, it's a good squad, not yet a good team. We need a heavy dose of the intangibles, confidence and bravery. And these are contagious. We need people who come in and set the example. You need more Scots. That's the big thing. We need more Scots. We've got a Scottish bias at the club today, meaning if there's two players that want to sign and one of them, and they're both at roughly the same level of talent, they'll take the Scottish player every time. He then said, Cavenagh, we apply the same thing to SPFL experience. We get two players of the same kind of talent level, but one of them's played in the SPFL Premiership. We take him because he knows the league as well. He's got that. This was very reminiscent of it was Graham Souness that gave us this line when he was explaining why he was going to bust wide open their stupid sectarian signing policy. When he arrived here 40 years ago, and Souness quoted the Jockstein line, and he adored Jockstein, did Graham Souness. And he said Jockstein had said to him that when he was Celtic manager, if there's two players of an equal level of talent, one was Catholic and one was Protestant, he'd take the Protestant every time because he knew the Catholic wasn't going to get signed by Rangers, and we were always the team that was most likely to catch Celtic. So apparently it's okay to favour Scots, to not want to sign non-Scots. That's what I mean. STV and all that are pushing for that kind of stuff, whereas back in the day we weren't allowed to have this sectarian signing. It's Catholics, anti-Catholic was bad. I don't know what's going on these days. I just reform, respite, reunite the kingdom. I don't know what's happening there. But Cavanagh's SPFL emphasis, I think, is a nice way of saying the whole Scottish thing's pish. In a way, it's just about getting the right players, guys who can play football, guys who can do it. But he says there will be a bias towards. He has said there will be a bias towards Scottish players. Nothing surprises me in Scottish football anymore, he said. I think when asked about the fallout from just the refereeing decisions and what had happened at Ibrox in the Scottish Cup quarter-final, it could be better. Scottish football could be run better, and we'd be prepared to lead on that. It's this thing of, we'll help. If you don't let us help, we'll fucking take over. This is what we need. That's what Celtic have been doing for decades now. The damage to the Broomloan in the Scottish Cup quarter-final Old Firm match, he wouldn't confirm, Andrew Cavenagh, if we're suing Celtic for £1 million for repairs required, but he did say that there's work needed, and they've asked Celtic to contribute to the cost of that work that's needed to repair the battering the doors open, to get in the emergency doors, to break into the stadium, just trashing the seats and all the horrible, disgusting vandalism. Just insulting the memory of the victims of the Olympics disaster, disgusting stuff. So they say that's going to be like £1 million of damage there, and they're going to ask Celtic for the. He doesn't. He said, we're going to ask Celtic to contribute. We're prepared to pursue remedy to the losses we suffered, but that's all I'll say publicly. He's not fully aware of all the laws and regulations in such matters in Scotland, but he'd imagine within SPF and SPLFL framework, there's always a way to elevate the pursuit of such matters. And there speaks a corporate prick, a perfect corporate prick, Andrew Cavenagh, the medical insurance world of America. So cutthroat, such a horrible business, and this is exactly what we need. Somebody like this to battle the corporate cunts who've been running 21st century Celtic, who will exploit the deaths of their own players, who will exploit anything to make sure that the consistent just trashing of the reputation of referees, consistent slandering of referees to the point where they were inevitably getting so many decisions. This is what we need to fight back. Getting the title, in 2020, when the rest of the world was saying, let's abandon football, folk are dying. But then turning it somehow, managing to turn it into a season, a couple of seasons later. We need to stop. We need to bring forward this winter break because folk are dying, and also we're a bit shit. And we need some new signings and guys back for injury. But he's saying that Celtic trying to ban the Union Bears from the last Old Firm game of the season at Parkhead by threatening to withhold all our tickets for that derby a week back on Sunday. As Cavenagh said, we fought that in two principles. A club shouldn't dictate which of another club's fans are allowed to get tickets. And two, Celtic were trying to create an unfair sporting advantage. Who didn't name Celtic at that point in time, but he's saying that we took that to the SPFL. The decision went against us, so we've asked the SPFL to see the documents on which that decision was based. We're not going away. We're not letting this shit go. It's important that all parties, and maybe even the government, the Scottish government, know exactly how this decision was reached, basically, before Rangers decide how we're going to deal with future allocations for Old Firm games at Ibrox. I thought it was very well done. It's Celtic don't in any way scare these guys. I thought it was fantastic. What's my wish list for next season? Just briefly touch on how I want things to go. You're the guy that said we should keep Danny Röhl, Alec. You're happy that he's staying. I think we should keep Romans and Chermiti and Nadiri, and I don't really care about anybody else. I'd like to perhaps keep Fernandez. Mikey Moore coming back would be great, but Mikey Moore did exactly what a decent loan player should do. He put in the levels a decent loan player should put in for Rangers. He just utterly shamed a lot of the players, full-time players, permanent signings that were there and are much older, much more experienced than him. So I think we're confused about the Mikey Moore thing. But he's a cracking player. I'm not bothered whether he comes back or not. Lewis Ferguson. If we signed Lewis Ferguson, that's all the captaincy, that's all the drive, the experience. He knows Scotland, he knows European football, he's got the experience of going to Italy. He's going to be playing a World Cup with Scotland. He would make my heart swell to busting point because of his family connections as well. The Snickers haven't already made my heart swell to busting point. That would be a phenomenal. Penrice from AK Athens, formerly of Hearts. Elliot Watt from Motherwell. Lawrence Shankland, fuck it, get him in. Get that. I think Shankland or Ferguson, rather than the two of them, would be the signings that would just get everybody absolutely ravenous. Would get everybody absolutely rabid. We'd be totally celebrating that. It'd be massive if we get either of those, I think, kind of marquee signings. But it's the profile. I think the profile of signing is exactly what matters. The four players we got in January, well, maybe it's arguable that only Romans and Nadiri have worked, and even Nadiri's injured a lot, and so is Romans. But that we need like 16 of those to ensure that at least 8 of them are decent and arrive able to play. No projects, need more experience, and that's what we seem to be getting. We're targeting that kind of player. Two Romans at Parkhead and Tynecastle. He's raging when he comes on as a sub at Tynecastle. Two Romans wanting a rammy straight away. And then he gets in that rammy and it's only Mikey Moore that backs him up. I think other players were in there, just like big guys. Like I said, I know that thing sometimes when you're a big guy, you go into a rammy, you're trying to play it down straight away because you know wee guys get really upset when big guys get involved. But it's, sorry, I don't mean that's a hard case. I used to work in the bookies and that's what they used to tell you. It's common sense as well, but you know how these things work. Common sense. I hate that phrase. Sorry. It's street smarts. Run away, Alec. That's my street smarts. Run away all the time. But Two Romans, I can just say he showed at Parkhead and Tynecastle. He's psychotic about winning. He's really raging at any prospect of losing. He's totally up for it. That's mentality, leadership, bravery. Keep the core. That's important. Not clearing things out. I don't even know that we've got a core. I really don't know that we've got a core, but I'm really looking forward to seeing my actual wish. It's more about what we can do with these players. My wish list for next season and how to do it, rather than who we can sell or who we can buy to make us do it. But is number one, we win the title. Of course, we've got to win the title. Number two, we get into and out of our European group stage. It's probably going to be the Europa League. If it's a Conference League, I want to win the thing. 3 would be a cup. Just what a cup as well as the league, preferably a treble. That would be nice. And 4, I would like the idea that Hearts are second. Hearts finish second in the league next season. Europe will slow them down, as I say, but if they get another 80 points to earn 90 points next season and they're still on the predicted upward curve under Tony Bloom, I see he's now a Zionist fascist according to some point. That Shankland gets what he deserves because he's a bigot, you know. But let it go, Alec, let it go. Hearts to finish second, and also Martin O'Neill to stay at Celtic this summer, and he's hounded out in January, mostly due to the fact that we keep winning. So that's fussy. That's additions to the main thing is we win the title, we get in and out of a European group stage, and preferably a cup or two to go along with that. But it's the process, and I like this talk of continuity. I like the way we're doing it as well. The chairman and the chief executive and the head coach seem to be synergising on this. We need control. Like we've got control off the field now. We need control on the field. I've watched Rangers just trying to... That's why I don't blame Danny Röhl for losing this league title. I think it's the fact he got us back into it at all. He was doing whatever he could think of with this team. It's like somebody it's like a chef who comes into and sees a cupboard and a fridge with hardly anything in it as you comes back to your place and he just says, I'll knock us up a nice omelette or something like that. That's what he's done. But now he wants his own ingredients so he can show us the top of the range stuff, the fancy meal that he can do. And the thing I noticed was he just chose to try and overwhelm opposing teams, especially the better ones, Hearts and Celtic, towards the end of his season there, because that was all we could do. We had no control. That game on Saturday there at Falkirk, when Falkirk come back to 3-2 just before the end of the first half, John Souttar then kind of gives the ball away, but it's that thing of he's played up to Diamandi. Basically, Falkirk almost equalised. They've always made it 3 each. This way we're just conceding so many goals. It's because we've got no control. And the control we had for the first half at Tynecastle against Hearts, it was with centre halves and our midfielders coming really, really deep. And Hearts couldn't get a hold of the ball, and they're getting beat, so they need the ball. But they soon found a way round about that, but that was the only way we could kind of control the game, and it was a way to control the game without really getting anywhere in the game. Although we're already 1-0 up from a set piece, but that's another big aspect of the season as well. Our new set piece coach, Scott, and we scored a lot of set pieces. That was notable. We need to build on that. But we need to push. We need to be able to get the ball and be able to control a game, and you do that. I think get a 6. We're talking about getting Elliot Water, but we just need a really good 6 or another way of doing it. Give us a coherent way of playing. My intangibles, continuity, consistency, yeah, we need them, but my intangibles are like set piece routines become set plays that become routine wins. And I think you should always listen to Joshua Barry, always listen to him on Rangers Review. And he made a point during the week, or last week, about Celtic having these guys who've been at Parkhead and have been winning titles for years. Even 3 or 4 years is fine. That's enough. They basically couldn't help themselves at times, Celtic, from scoring goals, from winning games towards the end of that season there, because this whole thing about getting Scottish players in, Maeda can't even speak English. I imagine he can speak English in the dressing room and on the pitch and all that. But when he's doing his post-match interview after his overhead kick against us at Parkhead a week back on Sunday, he's got an interpreter there still, and he's been at Parkhead for years. Hatate comes on at half-time in that 2-each draw at Ibrox and transforms the game. These are guys who just know Celtic inside out, and other players, the other experienced players, James Forrest has been there forever, and he's won a record number of titles and stuff like that, because he just knows what Celtic want. He knows what so many his teammates want. And we don't. We've got a brand new team, got a brand new squad. So many changes. You can't get that overnight. When we won the league under Steven Gerrard, it was after 3 years. And remember the first 2 of those seasons, side to side, this boring side to side stuff. And I noticed, and that then that was basically putting the framework down. I think Joshua Barry's mentioned this. It's probably what's made me think about it. So all credit to him. But it's reminded me that's what it was for 2 years. It was all side to side, side to side. It's not gone anywhere. And then we just added a few players up. But more importantly, the players who were doing it, the side to side stuff for the first 2 seasons under Gerrard, got it to a point where they had it done to perfection. And it's when I was watching Arsenal on Monday night against Burnley, when they're beating Burnley 1-0. They're only 1-0 up against Burnley. I think you're going for the title. And it was unreal. The whole atmosphere in the game was unreal, and the whole processes were unreal. Arsenal have scalped Atletico Madrid this season. They've scalped Bruges and Bruges. They beat Bayern 3-1. They blew them away. And here they were struggling against already relegated Burnley. But it was safe football. It was boring football. But it was football of a process, football of a routine. It was unreal because the atmosphere around the stadium is desperate but also appreciative of what they're saying. They know what's happening. And Burnley were having chances. They were certainly building stuff up and that, but Arsenal were always getting it away with it. They're always getting up the park. And they seem to be sacrificing the idea of having somebody in the middle of the box to put away the stuff that they were getting buzzed in the wing, they were getting buzzed in the byline, but whoever was heading down the byline for Arsenal, Trossard or whoever, was going to have to go and put the ball in the back of the net himself, because there was nobody. Eze occasionally arriving in the middle, but it was like they were more concerned with keeping the shape outside the box to stop Burnley. They'd got their goal through Kai Havertz, and that was it. They were going to defend that 1-0 at the Arsenal. And the other thing with Arsenal this season is they've only lost one game by more than a single goal, and that was the League Cup final to Man City, which they lost 2-0. That was so Steven Gerrard. That's so I don't mean for a second that Steven Gerrard's as good a manager as Mikel Arteta, no way, but it was so reminiscent of all that. And the unrealness of it, it's like, this should be a panic. I'm watching this thing, this should be a panic. The excitement's all coming from the tension in the crowd. And that's kind of unreal, but the play is unreal as well, because it seems so basic, but yet you know there's monstrous amounts of effort and tactical preparation and practice that have gone into it. And it reminded me of 55 sitting. It was unreal because we're sitting watching all the games on our laptops or on our telly. 55, there's no fans in the stadium, and that's what I think that's what you originally thought it was maybe slightly unreal about it. And it's the most real title win of my entire life, the most emotional title win, maybe the most important in Rangers history. And we won 55. But what was unreal about it, and this Arsenal game is finally making me realise, was just the control. We'd sit and watch Rangers beating Dundee United 4-1 at Ibrox, beating Aberdeen 4-1 and 4-0 at Ibrox. Bit more struggles when we went away from home. Of course, we didn't lose a game in the league that season. But it was the processes. It was the set routines. There was a kind of, I thought it was because there was no fans in the stadium. But like, the ball gets fed out to Ryan Kent, he fires it across the front of the goal, and Joe Aribo will get in there, or latterly Kamar Roof, Alfredo Morelos, Alfie will take the ball, he's back to goal, he'll feed it out wide to Tav. Tav will put a great ball right over the other back post, and in comes Borna Banisic. And he either puts in the back of the net, or he pulls it back for somebody. And there was stuff Ryan Kent was doing as well, which it all seemed so straightforward. It all seemed kind of too easy at times, especially after years of Rangers really struggling in the top flight, embarrassing themselves. But it was because it was practiced to perfection. They did 3 straight seasons, or 2 straight seasons, and then the third one, it hit, it kicked in, they were ready to go. It was consistency, total consistency, and you can't get consistency, you can't get continuity overnight. So I think that's why a rebuild, a revolution, they're avoiding all that patter. But that's exactly what's required. That's what's still going on, and that's why we need to stick with Danny Röhl. And I think it will be different this time. I think it's going to happen. I'm optimistic. Yeah, well, on Sunday there, I come back. my wife come back for you, and the two of them are sitting trying to watch it, and it's like the one time when Rangers over a bad result, we had a great result on the Saturday, but the bad result, of course, was Celtic winning the title. You want to watch something that's as far removed from the world of football as possible. I always end up watching these salacious, really cheap, really horrible, insulting programs about folk that have been murdered. And there's this series on Channel 5, and it's called A Killer Makes a Call. And it's always its thing is it plays the phone calls from somebody's phoning up to say, I've killed somebody, or I've just found a body, but it's actually they're the killer. They've got the killer phoning at the time of the murder. But this time it was somebody taking somebody hostage, and it's a woman called, is it Muriel Mackay? This is Sunday night. I watched this. I don't know if it was on Channel 5 on Sunday night or I watched it on demand or whatever. But we watched this, and it was a real life thing. She was kidnapped in December 1969. She's the wife of Alec Mackay, who was an Australian newspaper executive who was busy mates with Rupert Murdoch, and Rupert Murdoch loved him so much that he brought him over to help him work on the Sun, which was dying. The circulation of the Sun was at rock bottom. And this is the days when newspapers were really popular. So he brought this guy over, and then Rupert Murdoch was going back to Australia for some business trip or going back to see family or something, and he lent his Rolls Royce to this guy Alec Mackay. And these two guys had planned to kidnap Rupert Murdoch's wife. So they tailed, and just because they knew Rupert Murdoch had a bit of money, and they were going to, hold her hostage, hold her for ransom, and they followed the Rolls Royce. So they got the registration of the Rolls Royce and where it left the newspaper offices. But by this point, it was Alec Mackay that was using it. So they checked out his house. They followed it back to his house in Wimbledon at night time, and then when he went away to work the next day, they went in and they kidnapped his wife by mistake. They thought it was Rupert Murdoch's wife, and famously, it's a famous case. I'd never heard it before. It's quite amazing. This was December 1969. Her body's never been found. The two guys who did it, they caught them and they just charged them with murder without the body because the evidence was so overwhelming that they'd done it. They made a right arse of it, and one of the guys was released, like 40 odd years, still alive, and he was trying to help the remaining family, find the body, but they've never found the body. I don't know if he's jerking them around or whatever. Something's happened. This was the whole thing. And this is dark, but right at the beginning of the programme, there's an aerial shot, just one of these establishing shots, whatever you call them, in the TV world, and they're showing you, an overhead shot of Wimbledon, the area, and the posh area of Wimbledon where these folks stayed. And there's a church you can see, and there's these fences going up the side of their big posh houses with swimming pools and tennis courts and that. And I'm like, I recognise this. And I've never been to Wimbledon in my life. I've seen them. I've seen them playing Manchester United at Old Trafford and Aston Villa at Villa Park back in 1982. But I've never been to Wimbledon in my life. I recognise that street. And what turned out, I think, is this what I'm thinking it is? And it was. They eventually confirmed it was Arthur Road. Arthur Road in Wimbledon was where this woman stayed. And I'm like, this is the fucking Fairport Convention, the cover to Unhalf Bricking. Now, you may remember me from the fat ache that went down to England, down to Holmfirth, down to Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, back at Easter time for my Easter holidays, and we're staying in a wee holiday home. And when I come back, I was all the way down there, it's like the holiday vibe or whatever. I've been reading this book I told you about John Martin, the kind of blues, folk, jazz. He's a total jazzer as well. John Martin, kind of infamous Scottish, English, jazzy, bluesy folk guy for the 60s, 70s, 80s, into the 90s. Drank himself to death, but was a total bastard to his wife and all that. Really interesting read. Fantastic biography by Graham Thompson. And that took me into the whole world of the folk revival and the folk rock and all that, which I've never really been particularly interested in, but I've always heard me things here and there, a bit of Ewan McCall and that. Also been a bit interested in the politics of it and that. But I got a bit more into it, and you start doing a rabbit hole. You want to go and look into various stuff from it, but I did a podcast from Rupert Street in the West End of Glasgow, which is on the site of old Burnbank playing fields, right next to the spot where on Burnbank Rangers had their second ground, Rangers had their first enclosed ground before we moved south of the river again. ground in the West End for just a season. I did the 150th anniversary of our last game at Burnbank. It was a whole thing. In Rupert Street, I was saying that 19 Rupert Street is where Sandy Denny, I knew Sandy Denny was a famous voice, kind of in the British folk tradition. Sandy Denny is the only guest vocalist Led Zeppelin ever had. Led Zeppelin never had a guest instrumentalist or vocalist except Sandy Denny, the Battle of Evermore. You know, they're kind of hey nonny nonny. They're doing their Spinal Tap kind of Stonehenge hey nonny nonny stuff. Although it's Lord of the Rings type, Tolkien type stuff. They're very into it. It's a great song. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And her vocals on it are phenomenal. And I always thought, who is that? And I was telling you, I'll come back and I was telling you all about how, when I was doing the Fairport Convention, was a band that Sandy Denny was closely involved in. I was telling you about A Sailor's Life, this song a few weeks ago. And I discovered this album, On Half Bricking by Fairport Convention. I heard the name Fairport Convention. It's a distinctive name. I never really knew who they were or what kind of music they did, why they were so significant. I found out about it via this book, and Sandy Denny was her vocalist for a few years, and that was Rupert Street when Rangers used to play. That was, her dad was Scottish, but he'd moved down south, and she'd come back up to Glasgow for the folk scene there and recorded stuff. And it's on, if you just look up 19 Rupert Street on YouTube, you'll get Sandy Denny's recordings there with Cambo, famous part of the folk revival in Scotland, the Glasgow folk revival, very different from the Edinburgh folk revival, and in the 50s and 60s, but it's phenomenal. But Sandy Denny was just... So I'd started listening to Fairport, and I found the story of Fairport Convention. It was really interesting, and some of their songs, I'm on this holiday vibe down there, and I listened to this, and it goes on YouTube. It's bringing up all the songs from this album. It was 1969 that their albums were kind of changed. This revolutionised British folk music and became folk rock. They invented British folk rock through On Half Bricking, and then Legion Leaf. These two albums they brought out in '69. One of them kind of January to April they recorded it. The next one was November to December in '69. And I'm loving it, and I'm telling you all about it, and it was at the same time as Rangers beat Falkirk 6-3. That's the game that took place when I was down there. I was down in my holidays, down in Holmfirth, listening to On Half Bricking in the shower every day in this holiday home, just loving the whole vibe. And there's a folk music festival, takes place in May. In Holmfirth, there was stuff about folk music, traditional British folk music all over Holmfirth, so that was nice. It was just a whole vibe. You know, you get in holiday, you get into stuff that you wouldn't be into in your normal 9 to 5 routine. That's what I was doing with On Half Bricking and Legion Leaf, and listening to it in the car on the way down, the car on the way back up, driving up and driving down. And I was telling you guys all about it. And that's in the cover of On Half Bricking. Because Rangers had won, we beat Falkirk 6-3. We seemed to be we were getting beat 2-0 North, and we won 6-3, but then we played this football, and it was phenomenal. And I thought, this is it. This is it. It's going to be different this time. We're going to win this league. And there's no worries, so you can listen to lighter music, but it's more ethereal music. It's pretty deep. It's not a lot of it's pretty depressing as well, but it's beautiful. And it's, you wouldn't know, I don't normally listen to kind of rock music or, Radiohead or something like that. But this was amazing. And Rangers have won this game 6-3 against Falkirk, and it just plays into the whole magical Renaissance type feeling of the whole thing. But the cover of the On Half Bricking album, I mentioned this on the pod, an amazing cover. It's phenomenal, and it's the band. Basically, I think Sandy Denny's sitting in a deck chair, but it's on a grass lawn, and the rest of the band are standing. They're all hippie gear. It's all late 60s, early 70s hippie stuff. It's obviously 1969. They've taken this photograph. But they're in the distance. They're in the background. They're behind a fence. And the focus is on this middle-aged couple, very smartly dressed, standing outside their house. It's got a lovely big tree and this church in the background. A very posh area, and it's like, oh, that's nice. That's quite a good contrast. These mad hippies in the background. That's Sandy Denny's mum and dad. Because like most folk do this kind of music, they're from a very middle class background. Sandy Denny's mum and dad outside their house, which is in Arthur Road, Wimbledon. It's the same fucking street as the woman, Muriel Mackay, who was kidnapped and murdered by these two guys from her house in Arthur Road in 1969, December 69, after On Half Bricking was released, and that photograph was taken between January and April 1969. And it's like, I had so much hope. And the fact I watched this on Sunday night is fucking out there. I had so much hope and belief, we all did, going into after that game, we thought going into the splits or going into the weekend off, Scottish Cup semi-final weekend, we weren't taking part, and we're going to wait till La Manga, the Rangers team. It's going to be fantastic. Unheartbreaking is a brilliant album. I've just discovered that album cover is amazing. Everything is phenomenal, and it didn't work out. It died. The dream died, and it was murdered brutally. And not only did we not win the league, Hearts didn't win it either. Celtic won it in horrible circumstances. From a Rangers point of view, horrible circumstances. And we've had to listen to more bullshit about Celtic fans. It's the same as any other set of fans. You know, when you're out of order, you're out of order. I mean, I know you're not. But and then that night, I watched the Sunday, the day after that's happened with Celtic, I watched this thing, and it's like it's killing the unhalf-bricking album cover. It's killing this beautiful notion I had of Arthur Road in Wimbledon. A woman was murdered like 2 doors down from where that photograph was taken the same bloody year that photograph was taken. So that's what it feels like. That's how I feel. That's just an unreal coincidence, an unreal symbolic kind of statement on how this last few months has went. Don't for 1 second think I am taking the way Rangers finished this season lightly. But this idea of let's never speak of this season again, let's never speak of 2025, 2026 again, let's consign it to the waste bin of history. No fucking way. Because I do feel, even if we are terrible next season and Danny Röhl is sacked by November, and we go through the whole cycle again, it's part of our history. Get Nietzsche about this shit. It's like the tough stuff you go through, the hardship you go through, is what makes the great times even sweeter. The 2 terrible seasons we went through in the league under Steven Gerrard, because they offered so much hope. It's like, if you're not going to win it, don't offer us any hope. Fuck that. Because the only way you get better is by trial and error, but you have to have lots of successes to prove you're getting better, and then you fail to prove you're not good enough. Ask Arsenal, ask Mikel Arteta, the guy who scored the goal that won us the league. Oh, technically might be the one before that. In 2003, that penalty against Dunfermline. Ask the Arsenal fans who watched him finishing second 3 seasons out of 4, thinking it's never going to happen, and then they get their second last game of this season, 5.5 years into his tenure. Danny Röhl's only been here 5 minutes, and I think he's absolutely the man. It's been horrible, yeah, but one final line from Heat, the reason Neil Macaulay, played by Robert De Niro, when he's talking to John Voight under that motorway when they're hiding for the cops and all that, and he's asking about this guy that's chasing him, this Al Pacino, this Vincent Hanna, his heart attack guy. He's one of the, as funny as a heart attack, he's one of these guys that's out there all night, dedicated. 3 marriages. You think that means you like staying home nights? He's one of the guys out there all night, dedicated. With this much heat, you should pass. You don't go through with this bank job. He's going to catch you. And De Niro says the risk is worth a stretch. The reward is worth a stretch. The score is worth a stretch. He's going to go away afterwards. He's going to be the love of his life. That's his plan with the millions he'll get from this bank job. So even if he has to go to prison for it, as long as they get the money stashed before he goes to jail, she'll be waiting for him when he comes out and they can live their life together. For me, the score is worth a stretch. The risk is worth the reward. We've just done the stretch. Next season FC, we are going to get that reward. Thank you so much, everybody, for your chats. Thank you so much, everybody, for getting in touch and for supporting this podcast. I will be back inevitably. There'll be more Rangers news coming, and the World Cup. There's no way I can avoid doing any pods for the World Cup. I think it's, as Gaz was saying, of 104 games, about 104 preview pods and 104 post-match reaction pods over the course of 11th June to 19th July. But I'll definitely at least have a weekly pod, I would imagine, or one big preview pod and one big reaction pod to the World Cup, and all the best to Scotland in that. But thanks very much, folks, for all your time and all your kind feedback. 2025, 2026, it was tough, but it's over, and hopefully it's all going to be worth it. Thanks, folks.